Chapter 2341. By the way, senior sister, I'm going to see a few people these 2 days. What are you going to do? Feng Yi discovered that this little junior brother of hers was not an ordinary person who could stir up trouble. He was just an independent cultivator, but he was so bold. He had provoked the door of heaven before turning into a star. He had just turned into a star, but he destroyed the fighting dragon street and killed a peak star condensation cultivator. Feng Yi's intuition told Feng Yi that there was definitely a situation when she went to meet a few people. Han Fei grinned. Senior sister, do you remember I said that I met a powerhouse who seemed to be from the Temple of Time in the Scavenger City? Feng Yi nodded slightly. I remember. I specially looked into it, and there is indeed a scavenger city in the chaotic wasteland that you are currently in. Although there is a venerable sovereign overseeing it, it is a polluted land, and ordinary people would rarely explore the wasteland. Furthermore, the people there seem to be very low-key. Han Fei nodded slightly. The environment there is a bit bad, but it is definitely worse than the outside world. But it is still one of the few dangerous places in the divine land of the East Ocean. During the tidal wave eruption every 100 years, it is almost a dangerous place. However, I don't know why the Temple of Time would visit that place. If the person I know is from the Temple of Time, she may have been there for 10,000 years. I suspect that there is some special secret in the chaotic wasteland. Feng Yi nodded slightly. Hearing Han Fei's words, she also felt that something was wrong. If the person Han Fei knew was from the Temple of Time, why did she stay in that remote place for so long? Feng Yi nodded. I will arrange this matter. I will let you know before the end of the competition. Han Fei grinned. Thank you, senior sister. Han Fei thought to himself, it's good to have a superior. Although the Phoenix Divine Clan is not a super force in the divine land of the East Ocean, it is still a super force, isn't it? If they want to get some information or something, it will definitely be easier for them than me. After expressing this, Han Fei said, there is one more thing. I have made a deal with the person suspected to be from the Temple of Time. On this trip to the Divine Capital Dynasty, I will meet a few people on her behalf. Feng Yi's eyes flashed. You represent her? What is it exactly? Han Fei shook his head slightly. I don't know. Just say her name and take out her token. Feng Yi was speechless. You even made a deal with her? We have to make a deal. She was the only one who saw through my identity. She was a very smart and difficult person to deal with. But Han Fei suddenly said, but I don't think it's very dangerous. I'm more inclined to think that this is a kind of test. Feng Yi couldn't help looking at Han Fei. The entrance test of the Temple of Time? Han Fei nodded slightly. If the other party is really from the Temple of Time, I suspect that this so-called meeting is a test, but not necessarily an entry test. But no matter what, I'll know when I get there. Feng Yi, should we tell eldest senior brother? Not yet. What if they don't have this purpose? I want to see what they want before I decide what to do. But I have to tell senior apprentice sister about this in advance. Whether the other party is from the Temple of Time or not, I will not go to the Temple of Time. Feng Yi smiled and said, that's true. No matter how strong the Time Temple is, how can it be stronger than my Void Temple? You might not be able to see it now, but it's said that you'll be able to see it after you've proven your Tao. In any case, the Void Temple is the strongest. Of course, Han Fei felt that the Void Temple was the strongest. He had analyzed this problem long ago. Among the 3 temples, the Undying Temple should be the weakest in theory. At least in terms of individual combat power, they were definitely not as strong as the Void Temple and the Temple of Time. This was easy to understand because the Undying Temple had a lot of people. If you had so many people, it could only mean that you were strong in group combat and could use crowd tactics. Of course, there must be some powerful Undying among them, but the upper limit of their combat power was definitely not as strong as that of the Void Temple. As for the Temple of Time, they were more like powerhouses wandering in time, and their main talent was not in fighting. For example, Mo Chi was a prophet. This kind of person was more like a wise man. Of course, the combat power of the Temple of Time was definitely not weak. It was just that Han Fei felt that their strength should be due to tricks, not real combat power. But the Void Temple was different. Just look at Feng Yu. She had reached the peak of the star transformation realm and was about to prove her Tao. Furthermore, if one were to look at it in terms of actual cultivation time, he was using time acceleration to cultivate, while Feng Yu was using the natural growth time to cultivate. According to the things that her senior brothers and sisters gave Feng Yu, it could be seen that Feng Yu would prove her Tao very soon. Even Feng Yu was about to prove her Tao. Han Fei thought that all the other senior brothers and sisters were naturally venerable emperors. Especially eldest senior brother. If it weren't for the fact that there were no gods in this world, Han Fei thought that eldest senior brother should be a god. After telling Feng Yu everything, Han Fei was just about to go out for a walk to make his existence known. But unexpectedly, there were guests in his courtyard 306. These guests were actually Wu Shuang and Wang Beichen. Han Fei thought that they were right. The crossing should have arrived at the divine capital dynasty, so the people on the ship should have already arrived. Feng Yu didn't want to know these people, so she left with Feng Xingliu and Feng Qingqing, because in the next few days, she had to let Han Fei deal with his own affairs. She still had to pay attention to the test of the Temple of Time. If anything went wrong, she would ask eldest senior brother for help. Feng Xingliu sighed. Alas, I'm having a good time with Han Fei. I don't live in the sky number 2 room. Feng Yu snorted. Shut up. Han Fei is busy these days. Don't hang around there. Also, you just awakened your bloodline for the second time. Go and consolidate your cultivation. Feng Qingqing nodded. Yes, go and consolidate your cultivation. Otherwise, how long will it take for you to catch up with brother Han Fei? Feng Xingliu scoffed. Hey little girl, are you siding with an outsider now? Didn't Han Fei just give you a divine weapon? Why are you siding with him now? Feng Qingqing said, I'm telling the truth. It has nothing to do with the divine weapon. Although you fought through the fighting Dragon Street, did you forget who helped you when you couldn't fight anymore? When you were halfway through, he had already finished. Feng Xingliu's face immediately darkened. But I fought more fiercely. I was more dazzling. Feng Yu glanced at Feng Qingqing in surprise. Han Fei gave you a divine weapon? What divine weapon is it? What's its quality? Feng Qingqing summoned a lotus seed in her mind. She said, this is a soul-calming lotus seed, a low-quality soul protection divine weapon. But it should be a set. If you collect all of them, you can probably make a set of high-quality divine weapons. But it's very difficult to collect all of them. Feng Yu nodded slightly. Indeed, this kind of lotus seed soul protection divine weapon was not rare, but it was extremely rare to find one in a set. The corners of Feng Yi's mouth curled up slightly. Looks like little junior brother is still very loyal. He gave his sister a divine weapon and helped Feng Xingliu awaken the second time. It seemed that eldest senior brother was right. Little junior brother was very lucky and strong. At Han Fei's residence, Wu Shuang and Wang Beichen came. Seeing them, Han Fei immediately said, Hey! The crossing is finally here. You two came at the right time. Wu Shuang smiled faintly, seeming somewhat bashful. The crossrail speed is naturally a bit slow. But as soon as we arrived at the divine capital dynasty, I heard that you fought through the fighting Dragon Street alone and killed Yi Qianxing, a perfected expert of the heavenly race. I didn't expect you to hide a lot of strength. Han Fei laughed. Really? I didn't hide anything. It's just that Yi Qianxing doesn't live up to his name. Wu Shuang sneered inwardly. Doesn't live up to his name? You think I don't know who Yi Qianxing is? Although this guy is not on the heaven list and has been suppressed in the heavenly race. But secretly, he is recognized by many as the strongest expert on the heaven list of the East Sea Divine Continent. Wang Beichen was much more straightforward. He said, I mainly came to see if you're injured. It seems that you're in good condition. I'm looking forward to meeting you in the 10,000-year competition. Han Fei said with a smile, Why do we have to fight each other? We have plenty of time to learn from each other. There are so many people in the 10,000-year competition. Wang Beichen's expression softened. A faint smile appeared on his stiff face. Unlike Wu Shuang, Wang Beichen simply came to see if Han Fei was injured. After all, he knew how dangerous it was to kill Yi Qianxing. He just came to see Han Fei as a friend. That was also the reason why Han Fei and Wang Beichen got along with each other. It was simple. However, Wu Shuang always gave him a mysterious feeling. So, although they were friends on the surface, Han Fei still felt a sense of distance from her. Wu Shuang asked, "Why don't I see Feng Xingliu and Qingqing? Aren't they here?" Han Fei said, "Well, Feng Xingliu was indeed seriously injured. He's recovering now. Feng Qingqing must be watching from the side." Wu Shuang smiled. "I heard that Feng Yu, the top expert on the heaven list, is also here?" Han Fei said, "Yes. The top expert on the heaven list is unfathomable. She just sat here for a while and chatted with me for a while. Then she left." Han Fei didn't keep it a secret. Everybody knew that he was on good terms with the Phoenix Divine Clan. With Feng Xingliu and Feng Qingqing as a guide, it seemed natural for him to get in touch with Feng Yu. Nobody would suspect anything. But if he deliberately avoided them, it would raise the alarm of others. Wu Shuang and the others just chatted for a while and then left. After knowing that they were gone, Han Fei was confused. Wu Shuang didn't seem to have a purpose. She just came to take a look and chatted with him for a while. He couldn't help but wonder if the girl really had no ulterior motives. Chapter 2342. 2 days after the Dolong Street incident. On the 3072nd island, in a cluster of densely packed residential buildings, there was a house that occupied an area of less than 50 square meters with a courtyard of about 50 square meters. A young man who was an advanced hidden fisher was cultivating cross-legged. At the door of the house stood a little girl who was only a beginner hanging fisher, which was too weak in the Divine Capital Dynasty. In the Divine Capital Dynasty, even a teenager who grew up naturally couldn't just be a beginner hanging fisher. At least, he could be a peak-level hanging fisher. Those who were more talented were mostly peak-level hidden fishers or even law enforcers. Therefore, the two youths in the courtyard could only be considered ordinary in terms of aptitude. Buzz, a streak of green light flew over. The two youths' eyes lit up at the same time. The little girl shouted, "Brother is back." The young man, on the other hand, couldn't be agitated. He first calmed down and cultivated, then exhaled a mouthful of turbid air and quickly got up. "Brother, didn't you say that you would be busy recently and might not have the time to come back?" Chen Yi patted the tortoise beneath him and then jumped down. "It's fine. That client of mine is currently in seclusion. I'll just go and check on him once every 12 hours. I'll take advantage of this time to come back and give you something." In the past 2 days, Chen Yi heard that Han Fei was in seclusion, so he didn't disturb him. And the level of Han Fei's residence was too high. As an explorer-level guide, although he had the right to go there, he couldn't stay there forever. Therefore, he could only stay at home. Every 12 hours, he would go up and ask. Most importantly, his task as a guide was not over. Of course, it also depended on whether Han Fei would give them extra remuneration. So, for the past 2 days, he had been wondering if Han Fei had forgotten him. After all, he was just a guide at the peak of explorer. Moreover, Chen Yi was very cautious. He knew that Han Fei had broken through Dolong Street and knew how terrifying this lord was. However, he was the one who brought him to the Dolong Street. Theoretically speaking, a fight between powerhouses of that level shouldn't affect a small character like him. However, there was nothing wrong with being prepared. Things had already happened. If something happened to him, who would take care of his younger brother and sister? Therefore, in one breath, he took out all the money he had on him and went to the Zhao Trading Center to buy a marrow-changing pill and a meridian-raising pill. They heard Chen Yi say, "Look what Big Bro brought back for you." Dang 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 dang. When Chen Yi took out the treasure box that was emitting a dense red mist, the young lady seemed to have understood something. She exclaimed, "This is the meridian-raising pill? Brother, you're crazy. This one costs 40,000 li of resources." The young man also took a deep breath. "Brother, have you used up all the resources you need to break through to the supremacy realm?" Chen Yi laughed and said, "What do the two of you know? How many resources can you use to break through to the honorable realm?" It wasn't like he was breaking through to the monarch realm. Breaking through to the venerable realm was very easy. "Hey, Don't panic, I still have something good. Dang 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 dang. After that, when Qinyi took out another item, he revealed a mysterious smile and said, Xiaoshu, this is for you. This time, Chen Xiaoshu could recognize what it was from the words on the box. He exclaimed in shock, Brother, was this the marrow-changing pill? It's a precious pill used to cleanse the marrow and is even more expensive than the meridian-raising pill. Brother, you're crazy. Did you use mom and dad's pension? Chen Ye's gaze sank and his expression turned serious. Xiaoshu, resources are meant to be used. With this marrow-changing pill, your potential will increase by another level. With the meridian-raising pill, Xiaoya's spirit meridian might increase by another level. Chen Xiaoya shook her head. Brother, it can't be increased. My innate spirit meridian is damaged. After using 3 meridian-raising pills, it's only a high-grade level 2 spirit meridian. Mom and dad's pension has been used up by me. Shut up. Chen Ye's gaze turned cold. If I let you use it, you have to use it. So what if it's a high-grade level 2 spirit meridian? After using this meridian-raising pill, it'll be grade 3. When brother gets a few more, it'll be grade 4, grade 5, grade 6. The young lady's eyes welled up with tears. Brother, but you should have broken through to the honorable realm long ago. Qinyi said, reaching the honorable realm requires understanding. It's not like you can break through just by eating a pill. After that, Qinyi looked at Chen Xiaoshu and said, I'm leaving in 10 hours. Xiaoshu, when I'm away, you have to take good care of your sister. After taking this marrow-changing pill, you should be able to reach the law enforcer realm in less than a year. A law enforcer is already considered an adult, understand? Chen Xiaoshu nodded slightly. I know, brother. But don't buy it next time. You have to earn resources to help yourself break through. Only when you break through to the venerable realm will our lives be better. Qinyi sighed inwardly. In the Divine Capital Dynasty, there was not much difference between a peak-level explorer and a venerable. The point was that he didn't know if he would be implicated. By right, he shouldn't look for Han Fei at this time. Now so many people were paying attention to him. However, Han Fei had said that he would give him a body-refining technique. If it weren't for the heavenly race, this technique would have been in his hands. The damn heavenly race. Now, relying on his identity as a little guide, no one would care about an ant like him, so he dared to continue to look for Han Fei. Whether he succeeded or not, he had to see him again. He had to fight for what he had to fight for. At this moment, a silhouette suddenly appeared in this ordinary-looking and even a little crowded small courtyard. This person appeared behind Qinyi, but was clearly seen by Chen Xiaoshu and Chen Xiaoya. Brother, Seeing that his brother and sister were all looking behind him, Qinyi suddenly felt as if he had been struck by lightning. Could it be that those big shots wouldn't even let go of an ant like him? He was ready to go home this time. Until this matter completely faded out of people's sight, he would never go home again. When Qinyi turned his head back with difficulty, his heart, which had sunk to the bottom of the valley, suddenly relaxed. Master Han Fei? Gulp, Qinyi was dumbfounded. He never expected that it would be Han Fei who would appear here. Seeing that Qinyi was dumbfounded, Han Fei said, I heard that in the past 2 days, you went to my place every 6 hours to see me 4 times. This time, I came out not long after you went there, but I didn't see you, so I asked where you lived. Qinyi hurriedly saluted. Nice to meet you, Master Han Fei. Then Qinyi said to his brother and sister, Come on, greet you Master Han Fei. Master Han Fei is a super strong master of the heaven-opening state. Chen Xiaoshu was shocked, and Chen Xiaoya was full of curiosity, but they still hurriedly saluted Han Fei. The 3 of them were frightened. Qinyi didn't know why Han Fei came here. He wondered why such a big shot, a super strong master who could destroy the fighting Dragon Street, would come to his place. He suspected that Han Fei had other purposes. Chen Xiaoshu and Chen Xiaoya were so shocked because they saw a strong master of the heaven-opening state. Although they all lived in the Divine Capital Dynasty, heaven-opening state experts were not easy to see at their level. They only knew that there were strong masters of the heaven-opening state, but they had never seen one. Han Fei smiled faintly. You are very cautious, but don't worry. I won't break my promise to you. Then, Han Fei gave out a lot of star shells and said, here are the resources within 50,000 kilometers. This is your first reward. Although the transaction with the Zhao Trade Center that you recommended was not completed, at least you have done it. Chen Yi was shocked and took a deep breath. He had just exchanged all the resources of his family for 2 pills, and now there were 50,000 kilometers of resources, which he didn't expect. In fact, he didn't have any hope for these rewards that Han Fei said. Chen Xiaoshu and Chen Xiaoya sucked in a deep breath. 50,000 kilometers worth of resources. That was such a huge amount of resources that they couldn't even imagine. But they knew that such a huge amount of resources should be enough for Qin Yi to cultivate to the peak of the Venerable Realm, right? Thank you, Master Han Fei. Qin Yi hurriedly saluted again. Han Fei said, you deserve this. Then Han Fei casually threw out a jade slip. This jade slip records a venerable level divine quality body refining technique, which you deserve. However, this jade slip can only be read 3 times. Chen Ye's heart skipped a beat. Venerable level divine quality? He thought that he could accept high quality ones. If it was an ultra quality one, it would be the greatest reward. But he never expected that Han Fei's reward was a divine quality one. 3 times, which meant that Han Fei wouldn't allow him to teach this technique to anyone else. But thinking that this was a divine quality technique, Chen Ye's heart trembled. Han Fei didn't care about this and casually threw it to Qin Yi. The latter hurriedly held it in his hand and couldn't even speak. Han Fei didn't even look at the technique that he threw out but looked at Chen Xiaoya and the pill in her hand. Then he looked at Chen Xiaoshu. These 2 boys both had problems with their congenital spiritual heritage, especially Chen Xiaoya. Her problem was much more serious. Her problem was just like Han Fei's congenital damaged meridians. However, the level of her spiritual heritage had been forcibly uprooted, and a lot of medicinal properties had accumulated in the little girl's body, almost turning her into a medicine man. Han Fei couldn't help but ask, how many of these pills has your sister taken? Chen Yi hurriedly said, Master, 4. Han Fei looked at the meridian-raising pill. This pill was not low-grade and should be very valuable. But after hearing what Chen Yi said before, and thinking that Chen Ye's father's comrade was in the Pioneer Sea realm, he must have died. He reckoned that it must have died, and the mother of these 2 children was heavily injured when they were born. Han Fei said, she can't eat anymore. If she eats anymore, she will die. Qin Yi was horrified and looked at Han Fei in astonishment. He didn't know why people would die if they ate the meridian-raising pill. But he knew that Han Fei was the man who defeated the Fighting Dragon Street and challenged the Heavenly Clan. What he said must be right. Immediately, Qin Yi panicked. His face was pale, and then he looked at Han Fei. Senior Han Fei, please save my sister. I don't want the resources, the great technique, I don't want the great technique. But please save my sister. Han Fei couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. I dare not say that the great technique I give you will let you dominate the venerable realm, but it will be enough to easily make you a heavenly talent. The stronger you are, the more opportunities you will have to access better cultivation techniques, combat skills, and great techniques. Are you sure you don't want them? Brother, shut up. Senior, I can do it myself, but please save my sister. Han Fei grinned and said lightly, you're not bad. Chapter 2343. At the peak of the explorer stage, there were very few people in the world of cultivation who could give up the greatest opportunity in their lives and give up the divine quality body refining technique. If he hadn't encountered this, he could have ignored it. However, this was only a small matter that was within his power. This little girl's congenital damaged meridians were caused by her lack of vitality and qi. For Han Fei, all he needed to do was to rebuild this little girl's spiritual meridians. It might be a bit difficult for others, but with the apocalyptic divine art he could completely cure this little girl and give her a good talent. He only needed to consume less than 100 years of vitality. As for Qin Xiaoshu's problem, it was even simpler. He simply lacked qi and blood, and lacked vitality. All he needed to do was replenish a little. Han Fei estimated that it would take him about 100 years of vitality to cure these two people. As for this 100-year lifespan, he could use the void lines to kill anyone and take it back. So he was not stingy. Han Fei stepped on the ground, and the entire courtyard was enveloped by an invisible barrier. Han Fei looked at the little girl and smiled. It will hurt, but the result will be very good. Do you dare to bear it? Chen Xiaoya nodded heavily. She was not afraid of pain. Compared with watching Qinyi use all the resources of the family to buy her a meridian rising pill, she felt that the pain she endured was nothing. Under the nervous, anxious, and expectant gazes of Qinyi and Qin Xiaoshu, Han Fei reached out and pressed his hand on Qin Xiaoya's head. The next moment, a golden light burst out, and at that moment, all the meridians in Qin Xiaoya's body collapsed. From the heart-wrenching roar at the beginning, to the next moment, she couldn't even scream anymore. Chen Ye's heart was shaking. He was still pressing Qin Xiaoshu with one hand to prevent him from doing anything impolite. Although he didn't know why Han Fei said that Qin Xiaoya would die if she took the meridian rising pill, he believed Han Fei. About 100 minutes later, when Qin Xiaoya's spiritual meridians were rebuilt, the power of the meridian rising pill accumulated in her body burst out at this moment. Chen Xiaoya's spiritual meridians began to be rebuilt, and they became level 8 spiritual meridians, only a little bit away from level 9. This was the spiritual meridians that Qin Xiaoya should theoretically have. Chen Xiaoya, who had rebuilt her meridians, passed out, but Han Fei had a strange feeling. So this was the feeling of channel sculpting? Interesting. Qin Yi and Qin Xiaoshu hurried to Qin Xiaoya. Under Qin Ye's expectant gaze, Han Fei said lightly, "Level 8 high-quality spiritual heritage is not bad." Buzz. At that time, Qin Yi and Qin Xiaoshu were dumbfounded. Level 8 high-grade. Clacks before the two of them were surprised, Han Fei snapped his fingers and Qin Xiaoshu was enveloped by a white light and passed out. Chen Yi, who didn't know what was going on, quickly looked at Han Fei, only to find that Han Fei had already put his hands behind his back and said, "They will wake up in a while. Your brother's qi and blood are weak. He'd better rest for half a year to consolidate his foundation before thinking about becoming a law enforcer. Our fate has come to an end. No one will blame you because of me. You don't have to come to Courtyard 306 anymore." Before Chen Yi could express his gratitude, the seal suddenly disappeared, and Han Fei was nowhere to be seen in front of Chen Yi. But even so, Chen Yi still grinned and bowed deeply to the void. "Thank you, Senior Han Fei, for giving me a second chance. I will never forget it." Han Fei left quietly. However, even he didn't know that Qin Xiaoya's reshaped spiritual heritage was inexplicably emitting a faint shimmer, which was the vitality in the spiritual heritage and a trace of inexplicable golden light. These two were slightly changing Qin Xiaoya's spiritual heritage until Qin Xiaoya stepped into the 9th grade spiritual heritage in one fell swoop. For Qin Yi, Han Fei's casual help was a great favor that he would never be able to repay in his life. But Han Fei felt that he had just done a trivial thing. In his mind, he was thinking about who he would meet later and how he would talk to them. Han Fei, who had already obtained the map of the Divine Capital Dynasty, easily found the number 1021 island. As soon as he arrived on the number 1021 island, Han Fei felt something was wrong. With his strength after turning into a star, he could easily feel that something subtle had happened on the number 1021 island. For example, he felt that there was a slight Tao of time here, which was only equivalent to an imperceptible repetition of a fallen leaf in the process of falling. For others, they wouldn't pay much attention to this kind of small detail. Here was the Great Path of Time, which didn't have the same effect as a falling leaf. The Great Path of Time here had an effect on the growth of some spiritual plants. This was also the Great Path of Time that Han Fei walked. He felt the Tao of Time and then followed the traces to investigate, only to find that there was a slight abnormality here. Otherwise, Han Fei probably wouldn't care. Normal people wouldn't care. In the Divine Capital Dynasty, one's perception couldn't be easily scanned. Otherwise, once detected, they would definitely be held accountable. At that time, even if they were no match for Han Fei, there would naturally be stronger people who would show up. After all, this was the Divine Capital Dynasty. Han Fei could kill Yi Qianxing, which was within the rules, but this didn't mean that Han Fei could be unscrupulous. Therefore, Han Fei just followed one of the abnormal spiritual plants. One of the leaves had a pattern on it that was growing repeatedly. Following this pattern, Han Fei changed his appearance until he came to a place called the Prophecy House. Han Fei couldn't help but sneer. Mo Qi just asked him to come to the number 1021 island of the Divine Capital Dynasty and didn't tell him the location. He said that he would know when he arrived. Now it seemed that there was no way out. Since he was here, Han Fei was naturally ready to get in touch with these people who had mastered the great path of time. Without thinking much, he walked straight in. He didn't know if people like Mo Qi and the others liked this kind of non-mainstream style. When he entered this prophecy house, he saw that there was almost no place to step, and there were all kinds of things everywhere. There were treasure materials, strange tools, various jade slips, information, shells and bones of marine creatures, and many seemingly very old weapons. Anyway, this place was no better than Mo Qi's place. Han Fei moved around in this garbage station that looked like a flea market for a while, and he finally found a relatively clean and spacious place in this rubbish-like garbage dump. The entire area was about 20 square meters. In this 20 square meters, there was an old man sitting on a table, facing the door, and he was looking at a conch shell. The conch shell had almost turned into a fossil, but the old man didn't mind and was still looking at it carefully. In his hand, there was another conch shell, but he didn't seem to want to study it for the time being. Behind the old man, in two other places, a young man was lying on a chair with his eyes closed. However, around him, there were at least 50 jade slips floating. Obviously, although his body didn't move, his brain was moving. There was also a young girl, holding a piece of cloth and wiping the crystal ball in her hand. It was as if she didn't notice someone coming at all. These three people's auras were restrained. Even Han Fei could only faintly feel the collision of the great path and could barely see through their strength. Han Fei walked forward, half of his body almost lying on the table, but these three people still didn't react. Even if this old man was less than half a meter away from him, he didn't react. Han Fei couldn't help shaking his head. He picked up the forearm-long conch shell beside the old man. He looked at the conch shell carefully for a while, and then he looked at the old man, only to find that the old man looked focused, and there seemed to be some strange brilliance in his eyes. Han Fei couldn't help but have a thought. He secretly activated the great path of time, and then found that in his eyes, the conch shell in his hand had a feeling that it was alive. At that moment, he seemed to see the flesh of the conch and a smiling mouth. Ha! Han Fei thought to himself, is this old man tracing the original form of this conch shell? Han Fei hadn't thought of using the great path of time to trace back time. Isn't it my past? Wait, what if I don't go back, but just try to see his past through one thing? Han Fei couldn't help but look at the conch shell in his hand. When the great path of time was secretly activated and gathered in his eyes, when Han Fei's eyes looked at the conch shell, he seemed to see a layer of illusory fog. When the power of his soul gathered and imprinted on the fog, Han Fei seemed to see a kind of illusory scene. He saw a conch, crawling on the bottom of the sea, with hexagonal eyes like antennas and a vertical mouth that gnawed on seaweed. Suddenly, Han Fei saw this crawling conch was picked up by a big black fish, and after swimming for a while, it was thrown into a sea spider's nest. When the sea spider opened the cover of the conch shell with its disdainful hooks, put its thin claws in, and killed the conch. As soon as it took out a little of the conch meat, the big black fish appeared again, picked up the conch again, and began to gnaw on it. Hiss! At this time, Han Fei felt a slight tingling in his soul. But he was curious about what kind of environment it was, so he wanted to take a deeper look. Thus, he saw the conch that had been half-eaten. Its flesh and blood began to heal. Han Fei even felt that he could see the squirming form of its flesh, the changes of its body, and the gathering of power. This conch seemed to have stored its last power in the depths of the conch shell, where there were hundreds of small conches. They were quickly absorbing this energy. At this time, Han Fei felt a little uncomfortable again. Suddenly, he heard the old man say, "Young man, it seems that this is the first time you have traced back time." Chapter 2344. Han Fei closed his eyes slightly and let himself come back to himself. When he came back to himself, he saw that the old man was looking at him with a faint smile. The young man stopped reading the jade slip and looked at Han Fei curiously. The young woman stopped wiping the crystal ball and looked at Han Fei with a hint of joy in her eyes. Under the gazes of the three of them, Han Fei said calmly, "Is this tracing back time?" "What else do you think it is?" the old man asked. "To trace back time, shouldn't you enter time and then cross the river of time?" Han Fei didn't hide the fact that he had mastered the great path of time, because the old man didn't hide it. The old man looked at Han Fei with a smile and shook his head slightly. Tracing back time doesn't mean that you have to chase the past. It's troublesome to chase the past, but isn't it easier to just look at the past? It's like when you casually looked back just now, you crossed almost 3 million years of time. How much will it cost if you want to trace back to 3 million years ago? Han Fei frowned. Is this conch from 3 million years ago? Although he didn't really go back in time, he knew that it was impossible for him to go back 3 million years with his Tao of time. Not to mention half of it, even 1/10 of it would be too much for him. You could enter the river of time by taking the great path of time, but it didn't mean that the river of time was your home. You could wander freely in it. Han Fei gently put down the conch shell and looked at the junk in the room. Then he realized what these people were doing. They seemed to be exploring the past and tracing the past. The reason why they traced back in this way was that, as the old man said, they had to cross the river of time to chase the past. It was too far away and couldn't be done by ordinary great path of time. Suddenly, a question occurred to Han Fei. He was wondering if the future was also studying the present since they were studying history. Han Fei said, "How do you know it's the present? The name Prophecy House doesn't seem to be used to trace back the past." "Giggle," the girl said, "the future is a forbidden zone of time. Only a few people can foresee it." Han Fei said with a smile, "Oh? What did you foresee?" The young man said, "The future is unpredictable. It's unpredictable for you and me." Han Fei chuckled. "You can foresee others, but you can't foresee yourself." "Interesting." Han Fei shrugged. He had no interest in this game. Emochi asked me to come in her place. She didn't tell me the reason or who she was meeting. "So, who are you?" The young girl said, "You should have some guesses in your heart, right?" Until this moment, Han Fei finally confirmed the identity of the other party and said with a smile, "I thought the Temple of Time was the most mysterious existence of the legendary 3 divine temples. I didn't expect you to settle in the divine capital dynasty so openly and even open a shop on the street." The old man smiled and said, "Being mysterious doesn't conflict with running a shop. We are still mysterious as always." Having no time to beat around the bush, Han Fei asked straightforwardly, "So, you were waiting for me?" The old man said, "Young man, you're smart." Han Fei said leisurely, "Is it so easy for the Temple of Time to absorb others? Do you know who I am?" The old man shook his head slightly. "I don't need to know who you are. All I need to know is that you've taken the Time Tao. Of course, not everyone who has taken the Time Tao can enter the Temple of Time. Otherwise, the threshold would be too low." Han Fei was just testing whether Emochi had informed these people about his identity as the human emperor. If she had, his alliance with Emochi would end here. Although this old man said he didn't know, who knew whether he knew or not, so Han Fei was very vigilant now. But the next moment, Han Fei said, "I think it's not common for people to take the Time Tao, right?" The old man nodded. Han Fei said, "Since it's not common, just a few days ago, Han Fei broke through the Fighting Dragon Street and killed Yi Qianxing. You should know this, right?" The old man nodded. Han Fei asked, "In that case, do you know who I am?" However, the old man still smiled and said, "I know you are Han Fei, but I don't know your real identity. Even though you have revealed the War God seal, there is no reason for you to appear in the chaotic wasteland. So, your appearance is a mystery." Han Fei smiled. "Not convincing." The young man said, "Very convincing. Because your identity is actually not important. In this sea world, there are millions of races. How can there be so many details? It's just that some people think you are good, So they want to observe you. Han Fei said with a smile, "Observe what? To see if I am suitable to join the Temple of Time?" The girl said, "Although you have the strength to kill Yi Qianxing, entering the Temple of Time is something that countless experts yearn for even in their dreams, but never have the opportunity to do so." Han Fei chuckled. "Miss, I can kill Yi Qianxing, and I am confident of getting the reward of this 10,000 years competition. I am very confident in my ability. If I do, what attraction will the Temple of Time have to me?" The girl said, "The road to becoming an emperor is also long, and there are many unknowns on this road. How many people do you think can give you a reference? In such a vast sea world, if an emperor is selfish, how can you go on this road?" Han Fei sneered. "Miss, do you think I can't go on without the Temple of Time?" The girl seemed a little angry, but she didn't lose her temper. She just said, "So, what do you want?" Han Fei said, "What do I want? Let's see what you can give me first. By the way, Emochi asked me to come to you just to give me a test, right?" Han Fei originally wanted to argue with this girl, but on second thought, why not take this opportunity to see the test of the Temple of Time? Although the Temple of Time seemed to have opened a shop here openly, they were still mysterious. At least he didn't know some of their internal situation. Besides, Feng Yu didn't know either. If he could take advantage of this opportunity to learn more about the Great Way of Time, would it help him further understand the Great Way of Time? Therefore, Han Fei didn't refuse immediately. Anyway, it was just a test. It didn't say that he must join the Temple of Time after taking the test. The old man smiled slightly. "Yes and no. Before taking this test, we will tell you some secrets of this world. Don't worry about the test." "Oh? Then I'm all ears." Han Fei sat on a clam casually. Compared with taking the test, he was also very interested in the secrets of this world. He just didn't know how much this old man could tell and whether he could tell more than Chu Hao. The old man said, "More than 100,000 years ago, the gods fell. You know this, right?" Han Fei nodded. Han Fei thought to himself, "Not only do I know, but I also know the reason." The old man said, "The reason, you can understand it as a terrifying power, an unknown power beyond the gods, which will bring the destruction of the entire sea realm and even the star sea." Han Fei pretended to be taken aback, but then said with a smile, "A power beyond the gods? Destroy the star sea?" The girl behind the old man, after seeing Han Fei's expression, obviously had a trace of disdain, as if she were standing on the peak of knowledge and looking down at Han Fei. The old man said slowly, "The stronger you are, the more you will know about this world." With that, the old man took out a crystal ball and pushed it in front of Han Fei. Han Fei thought this old man was going to tell him, but when he saw the time flowing on the crystal ball, he knew he was going to see it in person. Han Fei didn't doubt it. Feng Yu was paying attention to him coming to the number 1021 island. Not to mention that these people had no reason to attack him. Even if they really wanted to harm him, Feng Yu would probably watch them and take action. Han Fei didn't care. He took the crystal ball and sank his perception into it. At that moment, the world that Han Fei saw changed. He was in an unknown galaxy, surrounded by countless densely packed star remains. It seemed that someone was fighting fiercely. He saw a black fog that covered a boundless area, devouring those broken star debris. From time to time, there would be terrifying energy ripples emanating from the black fog. Every time the energy ripples vibrated, the surrounding debris of the stars would become even more damaged. Suddenly, Han Fei vaguely saw that an invisible force was leading tens of thousands of stars that were filled with surging energy into the black fog. Rumble! The continuous explosions were beyond Han Fei's understanding. Han Fei naturally couldn't imagine how terrifying the power of the explosion of a star was. But he saw that in the black fog, there seemed to be a black hole. He didn't know if it was caused by the power of the explosion of the many stars. A large area of the black fog was crazily devoured. At that moment, Han Fei vaguely saw that there seemed to be a figure fighting there. He couldn't see it clearly at all. Just like what he saw in the god's ruin, he seemed to only see a mass of golden light. Oh no, it was not just a mass of golden light. In the fog further away, Han Fei seemed to see a figure. Voila, in the universe, a long river suddenly appeared. It was a strange long river filled with blue water. What was it if not the river of time? Han Fei saw a figure walking out of the river of time, but it seemed that the figure turned into time. The long river bloomed, and the ripples of time swept across an unknown distance. Where the time covered, the black fog disappeared, and the big stars gathered again. Han Fei felt a sharp pain in his eyes, but he really wanted to see what happened behind. But the black fog had disappeared at this moment. What he saw was the reconstruction of countless stars. As the picture moved forward, Han Fei's position seemed to have changed. At that moment, he saw that there seemed to be a big hole in this sea of stars, a very big hole. Han Fei felt that it was bigger than all the roads he had walked in his life. Even though Han Fei knew his current state, he still felt how small he was. Rumble. In the big hole, countless blue chains began to spread out, from 10 at first, then 100, and then tens of thousands of them burst out in a flash and extended outwards. Then, the thing that seemed to be the chains of time locked up the incomparably huge hole in the sea of stars. Everything in the surroundings came to an end. At the last moment, Han Fei seemed to see some figures appear in the darkness. They stood in the darkness. Some looked back, some walked into the darkness, and in the end, they all disappeared in the darkness, until there were only stars left in Han Fei's eyes. Chapter 23:45. When everything in front of him disappeared and Han Fei returned to reality from the chaotic star sea, he subconsciously closed his eyes and slowly opened them after a long time. When he opened his eyes, he saw the old man and the other two looking at him quietly. Han Fei returned to normal, thought about the scene just now, and asked seriously, "What was that?" The old man was slightly surprised. "You calmed down so quickly. I didn't even see much shock on your face. What's the point of being shocked? Anyway, you will tell me." The girl curled her lips, and the young man said, "That's a small part of the battle of the gods." The battle of the gods? Han Fei recalled the scene he had just seen. The big stars were like rain, the void rolled backward, and the chains of time sealed the sea of stars. With all sorts of mystical and terrifying powers, it would be a lie to say that he wasn't shocked. In fact, he had also guessed it. Han Fei said, "So, what can you tell me by showing me this?" The old man said lightly, "That black fog will come back." Han Fei pretended to pause for a while and then said calmly, "So?" The old man said, "You should have seen the strong masters of the Temple of Time seal it, right? I showed you all this to tell you the power of the Temple of Time, and to tell you that the world we live in is not safe. Also, I want to tell you that in this world, there is a mysterious power that surpasses the gods. What do you want to cultivate?" Han Fei smiled slightly. "You did tell me some secrets about this world. But if that power surpasses the gods, why, do you think I have the talent to surpass the gods?" Puff, the girl didn't recognize him at all. "You're really narcissistic." Han Fei shrugged. "Then what's the point of showing me this?" The old man said, "We are telling you that once the ominous darkness revives, you and I, the billions of races, and all living beings in the world will be annihilated. And entering the Temple of Time, it doesn't matter whether you can become a god or not, as long as you can prove your Tao. On the way to proving your Tao, we are the strongest." Han Fei smiled and said, "The strongest? Why do you think so?" The old man said, "The Temple of Time observes the long river of time, recounts the past, and sees all the Tao in the world. In this world, there is no force that has an easier path in the Emperor realm than the Time Temple." Han Fei chuckled. "Unfortunately, Senior, you didn't convince me. The Grand Tao of Time is only one of my many Grand Taos. It's not my true Tao. Also, the Temple of Time can see all the Taos in the universe. That's a lie. At most, you can see some Taos that have appeared before, but you lack the ability to create new Taos. Even if you can stand on the shoulders of your predecessors, continue to grow, rise rapidly, and even become gods. However, the strong who rose from the same old path, which is what I saw just now, can't deal with the power that surpasses the gods. If that's the case, why should I join you?" With that, Han Fei got up. The Temple of Time is strong, but if this is your path, then I just want to say that the road is narrow. I have no interest in such a Temple of Time. The three people in the prophecy house all looked surprised. What they had just shown Han Fei represented the rapid growth of venerable emperors. They thought that a genius like Han Fei could easily see through it. He would soon find that as long as he joined the Temple of Time, he would soon stand at the top of the sea realm. However, this guy actually gave up on such a huge temptation? In the history of the Temple of Time, no more than 10 people had been so easily given up in all the recruitment. You don't even want to know what the test is, and you refuse us. You will regret it. The girl looked at Han Fei and said angrily. Han Fei smiled and said, regret? If that's all the Temple of Time can show me, then I can't. Sorry, I really don't know what I should regret. Maybe in the future, if you can show me something else that can really move me, I may consider it. The old man's eyes were distant, and he took a deep breath. What can move you? Han Fei shrugged. I don't know. It depends on you. With that, Han Fei was about to leave. So, then the girl shouted at Han Fei, are you looking down on the Temple of Time? Han Fei couldn't help laughing. Girl, is there something wrong with your brain? We just have different ideas. I don't deny the strength of the Temple of Time, nor do I mean to look down on you. However, this is not my way, nor the way I think is right. What's wrong? You're angry because I rejected you? Do you want to force me to join? Bah! I don't even know if you can pass the test. Now you left, maybe you don't dare to take the test. Do you dare to fight with me? Tianran, don't be rude. The old man smiled slightly apologetically. Little friend Han Fei, since you don't want to, the Temple of Time will naturally not force you. It's just that the scene you saw just now, please don't spread it around. Han Fei smiled slightly. Don't worry, it doesn't matter if ordinary people know about this kind of thing. I don't even bother to tell others. I think this girl's proposal is very good. I also want to see the power of the Temple of Time. It's not inappropriate to have a spar. In this regard, the old man did not refuse. To be honest, he also wanted to see Han Fei's strength. Above the sea of stars. This was a door opened by the old man and he walked into the star sea. Han Fei was quite surprised. Ordinary people could only appear in their own star sea. If they wanted to go to the star sea where they were, they should have to fly across the infinite sky. But this old man opened a door casually, which made Han Fei wonder how strong this old man was. Was he an emperor? Or did he use some other method to make himself appear in this sea of stars? But in any case, the girl named Tianran appeared in front of Han Fei at this moment. The old man and the young man stood in the distance and watched. Humph! I know you defeated Yi Qianxing. I also know that your strength has not reached the late stage of the star transformation realm. My strength is only at the late stage of the star transformation realm. Let's see how powerful you are. Tianran took the lead. As soon as she made a move, Han Fei felt that the surrounding area was suddenly blocked by time. As if a formation field was condensed in an instant, the sword of time slashed towards Han Fei. Turning time into a knife, Han Fei often used this trick himself. But through Tianran's hand, Han Fei felt that the flow of time in this sword of time was different. This meant that once he was cut open, his body would be scattered in different fragments of time. It was as if he had been sealed all of a sudden. Interesting. Han Fei felt it was quite refreshing. He had never fought against a strong master who walked on the great path of time. But as soon as the fight started, he felt that this girl was extraordinary. Han Fei didn't attack with all his strength at the beginning. Tianran could stagger time and shape swords of time that flowed in different directions. Then he just needed to shape chaotic time outside of himself and smash these swords of time. By confusing time, he could easily break Tianran's great technique. As soon as the sword of time hit Han Fei, it was twisted into the vortex of time, and the chaotic time fell into the river of time and then returned to peace. But this was just a test. Han Fei punched out with a backhand. Tianran waved her hand casually, and this punch was launched into another time. Tianran sneered. Your fist technique is useless in a battle of the great path of time. Oh no, Tianran launched another sword. This sword of time was not something that simple chaotic time could resist. Han Fei stretched out his hand and pushed, and time decelerated. But Tianran smiled disdainfully and accelerated time to offset the time deceleration. Han Fei also opened the dislocation of time like Tianran, trying to lead this sword to another time. But the time gap that Han Fei had just summoned was broken by this sword. Han Fei, who had no time to react, stepped back and entered the river of time, dealing with this move by reversing time. When Han Fei reappeared, he had returned to the position and state a few seconds ago. However, to his surprise, this sword was still in front of him. Fuck. Tianran said, "You can reverse time, so can my sword. It can even cross time and return to the past." Not far away, the old man and the young man who were watching the battle nodded slightly. The young man remarked, "It seems that he is indeed not familiar with the great path of time." As he said, this is not what he is best at. The old man nodded slightly. A newbie, interesting. Han Fei stretched out his hand and grabbed, and the sword of time disappeared. Seeing that his sword strike had disappeared, Tianran was flabbergasted. What kind of technique was this? Where was his sword? After Han Fei got the power of this sword of time, he didn't find anything special about it. This was just an ordinary sword of time. This showed that the characteristics of this sword had nothing to do with the sword itself, but should only be related to the natural great path. Therefore, it was not that this sword was powerful, but that Tianran's control of the great path of time was higher than his. Everyone had their own specialties. Han Fei had always walked the great path of time on his own. There was no one to verify or compare with. These were all taught to him by little time. Compared with the people of the Temple of Time, he was naturally much worse. Han Fei stood proudly in the sea of stars and smiled faintly. Chapter 2346. Han Fei had never underestimated the great Tao of time. In fact, even his own great Tao of time, which was not very strong, had saved him countless times. Therefore, he showed a strong interest in nature's use of the great Tao of time. For example, Han Fei learned from nature and used the power of time to imprison the possibility of nature's dislocation of time. Then, countless fist marks burst out, wanting to see how nature would deal with it. However, nature pointed her finger and time stood still. Only Han Fei, who was enchanted by the Tao of time, was not affected. His fist mark actually stopped in the void. It shouldn't be. She can stop time, and I should also lift it. Since I'm not affected by time, there should be several ways to break it. I can attach the Tao of time to my attack, or turn this place into my own domain. Han Fei already had a trick in his mind. When he punched the next time, the Tao of time covered the fist mark. Nature smiled contemptuously. Such a simple use. You know nothing about time. Han Fei didn't feel ashamed because he was laughed at. After all, he hadn't studied this Tao much, and the great Tao of time was difficult. Seeing his fist mark, which was enchanted with the Tao of time, being blocked by another Tao of time, the fist mark exploded in the void. Han Fei felt strange at that time. Why could the other party's Tao of time block his? Although the Tao was the same, the time frequency was different, right? Fuck, she saw through the essence of my time Taoist rhyme? Han Fei couldn't help but have such an idea, but he wasn't discouraged. Because he felt that the usage of the Tao of time was limited. Dislocation of time, time flow, time reverse, time stop. This kind of thing should be a competition of ideas and the mastery of the great Tao of time. Of course, ideas were also based on the understanding of the great Tao of time. As for now, Han Fei didn't know much about it, but he had a lot of advanced ideas. He just hadn't implemented them yet. For example, when he saw that his attack couldn't hurt nature, Han Fei added the disordered power of time to his fist mark, which was the chaotic power of time flowing in different directions. How could she capture the frequency of his great Tao of time? Thinking of this, Han Fei forcibly launched an attack. The surrounding time was chaotic. But this time, different from the chaotic time Han Fei created just now, it caused a strong vibration in the space. He heard Tianran shout, You don't know anything, yet you use it recklessly. The chaotic power of time requires an extraordinary vessel. But in the next moment, the void around Han Fei exploded, and a storm suddenly rose, but Han Fei still punched out. In the void storm, Han Fei was as steady as a mountain. No matter how much the storm rained on him, he couldn't be shaken at all. What was originally thought to be a chaotic flow of time had instead formed a strange cycle. All of the chaotic time energy was sucked into this strange cycle of time. So no matter how chaotic the surroundings were, he was safe and sound. Even the old man and the young man were surprised. The man was surprised. This is a time loop? How could he create a power like the time cycle now? The old man frowned slightly and pondered for a moment before saying, "No, this isn't a time loop. This is the cyclic time frequency." The young man was dumbfounded. What was that? Why don't I understand? The old man said, "You've all learned this technique. It's not a time loop, but a quantification of time. You should still remember that there was a great technique in the Void Temple that quantified the Tao of time. Then, you can reverse time within 10 units and create a time attack that only you can use and others can't crack. However, this belongs to the chaotic time." The young man frowned. "I remember it, but how can I quantify it like this? By right, reversing time at this frequency should cause chaos. Why isn't he chaotic at all? The power of time can't hurt him at all." The old man said, "As long as he follows a certain frequency, he won't be affected by the chaos." The frequency of reversing time he found doesn't include this point of time at all, but at the moment when the Tao of time bursts out, he realizes a cycle connecting the beginning and the end. Just like a circle. A circle? The young man didn't understand, but the old man exclaimed, "Genius, he's really a peerless heavenly talent. I can guarantee that he just comprehended it." He noticed the Tao of time that Tianran captured his Tao of time just now. So he immediately realized that maybe he did want to use the chaotic time to resist it at first. But then he found that he could shape the frequency of the Tao of time. Then, he found an almost perfect time reversal frequency in an instant. In fact, just as the old man thought, Han Fei did find a unique frequency, which was the legendary pi. Han Fei's original intention was to find a time frequency that Tianran couldn't imitate. Because Tianran's methods were strange, if the frequency he found wasn't complicated, it might be accidentally cracked by Tianran. So, he thought of the endless pi. However, after using this frequency, Han Fei found that he seemed to have an accident. That was, he found that the chaotic power of time didn't hurt him at all. They actually gave birth to an inexplicable power cycle. How inexplicable was this power cycle? For example, the punch that Han Fei punched out just now was cut by a natural sort of time and shattered. However, the next moment, the shattered fist mark condensed again and continued to attack Tianran. Time freeze. Tianran hurriedly unleashed the power of time freeze, but Han Fei's punch wasn't restricted by this power at all, because the time frequency attached to this punch broke through Tianran's time frequency. Not only that, Tianran wanted to use time dislocation to split Han Fei's punch, but as soon as the power of time dislocation burst out, it was destroyed by this punch. At that time, Tianran didn't feel good. This person was clearly a newbie who didn't have a deep understanding of the Tao of time. How come he suddenly burst out a punch and I can't crack it? Why can the Tao of time that Han Fei punched out reassemble after being shattered? In the end, Tianran triggered the Tao of time in front of him and exploded at the same time after touching Han Fei's punch. This time, the punch that burst out by Han Fei seemed to want to reassemble, but before it could, it was annihilated. However, the scene of the fist mark reassembling stunned Tianran, the old man, and the young man. A casual punch actually broke Tianran's multiple time techniques? What kind of magical time frequency did Han Fei find? Tianran and the others were just surprised, but Han Fei understood why this punch couldn't reassemble. That was because there was no such thing as an absolutely perfect technique in the world, nor an absolutely perfect frequency. There was no end to pi. Han Fei just used it to 1,000 digits, which was already good enough to cause such lethality. In fact, even if he remembered 10,000 or 100,000 digits, the effect might not be much better than now. It was estimated that he could only last 2 rounds and reassemble 2 more times than now. The fundamental reason was still related to his own strength. And the reason why Tianran and the others didn't understand was that the things they came into contact with were very profound, but they actually didn't understand the simplest things. It was like they couldn't calculate the tens of thousands of digits of pi. And the more complicated things were, the simpler they were, so Han Fei felt that it was only natural that he could win. At this time, Han Fei suddenly grinned and said, "Oh, do you have any other means?" Tianran's eyes turned cold. "Don't be so smug." Then a sword of time appeared in front of Tianran. Han Fei thought to himself, what else can he do? At the moment when this sword rushed over, Han Fei was about to block it. But this sword disappeared. Huh! Han Fei was puzzled. This sword had completely disappeared. It didn't make sense that it disappeared inexplicably. But at this moment, a time sword domain burst out around Han Fei, and the swords of time rushed at Han Fei. Han Fei couldn't help but say, "Hey, I've used this trick before. Do you have any new ones?" Han Fei casually threw out a sea of knives, but none of the so-called time sword domain could touch him. Just when Han Fei was about to continue to shout, suddenly, a sword of time appeared in front of him, which was exactly the one that had disappeared before. This sword appeared abruptly, and even his sense of crisis appeared at the moment the sword appeared. If it were an ordinary person, he would have been cut by this sword, because he wouldn't have time to resist or dodge. Still, Han Fei stole the power of this sword of time again. Sure enough, he couldn't underestimate the people of the Temple of Time. What kind of trick is this? The sword that disappeared a moment ago appeared a moment later. If it came from the river of time, he would definitely be able to see it. The point was that there was no movement in the river of time just now. It was as if this sword had jumped in the air for a period of time. Han Fei's heart skipped a beat. This was a super technique. If he learned this technique, combined with the frequency of pi that he had just comprehended, it would be almost impossible to defend against it. Therefore, Han Fei grabbed again without hesitation and directly stole nature's great way. Nature was not I-Chien-Shing and didn't have the ability to dodge and steal in an instant. So, when this sword appeared in Han Fei's hand, nature somehow forgot how to use the great way of time. Nature was suddenly horrified. What did you do to me? Why can't I feel the great way of time?" Han Fei casually waved nature's sword, cut open the time sword domain, and said lightly, "I've temporarily sealed it. It will naturally recover after a while." Even the old man couldn't help but frown. Sealed? Where did the sealing power come from? Why didn't I feel it? Chapter 2347. Finally, the old man spoke up. "All right, Tianran. You're not strong enough, so stop scratching." The old man said, "Little friend Han Fei, please remove the seal." Han Fei smiled faintly. "My seal can't be lifted, but it has a time limit. He will recover after a while." In fact, Han Fei was experiencing the natural great Tao of time. All of a sudden, a lot of ideas and knowledge about the great Tao of time appeared in his head. In the past, there were many things that he did not understand. Because Han Fei also walked on the Tao of time, he didn't need to use the Jade Bridge to create something out of nothing. As long as he seized the natural great Tao, he would be able to comprehend it for himself. Of course, Han Fei wouldn't release it before he naturally regained his Tao. He still needed to comprehend it. It wasn't until 100 seconds later that Han Fei realized something. It turned out that the power that nature had displayed just now was called time jump. As the name suggested, it was a great time technique that skipped a period of time. It sounded ridiculous, but the great Tao of space had void transference and space jump. Why couldn't the great Tao of time have it too? After about 220 breaths, Tianran suddenly regained all of her knowledge of the great Tao of time. At this time, she let out a long sigh of relief, thinking that the seal should have been lifted. At this time, Han Fei smiled. "Okay, since the seal has been lifted, let's go back." The elder activated a crystal ball and opened a door. Everyone walked in and once again appeared in the prophecy house. "Humph," Tianran coldly snorted. Her skills were not as good as others, so she had nothing to say. But she still didn't like people like Han Fei. He was too arrogant and even looked down on the Temple of Time. This time, Han Fei didn't sit down. He smiled and said, "After this spar, I've come to realize that the path of the Temple of Time is too narrow. Although you're very proficient in using the Great Tao of Time, you're too reliant on it. I am different, I take the high road, there are many. For example, if I walk the path of invincibility, does anyone from the Temple of Time walk it? I'm guessing that in the entire history of the Temple of Time, no one has ever taken this path." After that, Han Fei waved his hand gently and then walked out of the door. He said, "My agreement with Mo Chi has been fulfilled. As for the test, there was no need for that. I don't think the Temple of Time will burn the bridge after crossing it." After Han Fei left, Miss Dunren yelled, "Why are you so arrogant? It's just that I can't beat him. Not everyone in the Temple of Time is like that. What's wrong with walking the path of invincibility? Who does he think he is? How does he know that our Temple of Time doesn't walk the path of invincibility?" However, the old man shook his head slightly. He's right. In the history of the Temple of Time, no one has ever walked on the invincible road. But Tianran and the young man were surprised. Although the invincible road was rare, how could there not be one in the entire history of the Temple of Time? The old man continued, "Because the path to the undefeatable realm is incompatible with our time shrine. The road to the invincible realm could be understood as a result of fighting. It was an incomparably terrifying willpower. But our Temple of Time is better at learning. And the path of invincibility cannot be learned." The young man asked, "Elder Gua, are we just going to let him go?" The old man was silent for a moment. "He is still in contact with Mo Chi. Find a way to inform Mo Chi about this and see if you can persuade him through her. If the Temple of Time has an alternative heavenly talent like him who doesn't take time as the main line, maybe a new road will appear." Tianran asked, "Elder Gua, is this person trustworthy? What is his origin? Why didn't Mo Chi tell us?" The old man said, "If he told us, do you think there would be any interaction between him and Mo Chi? They may even become enemies because of this." Tianran muttered, "Is the Temple of Time afraid of him?" The old man said, "It's not a matter of fear, but whether it is necessary or not. Mo Chi asked him to come here, which means that Mo Chi wants to let us see him. This also shows that Mo Chi has a certain understanding of him. Otherwise, why would she ask him to come, and why would she want to absorb him into the Temple of Time?" A month and a half later, in the courtyard where Han Fei lived, he was lying on a reclining chair with his eyes closed, and the news from Neza echoed in his mind. The leader of the Wanderer City team was Han Fei's acquaintance, Duan Qingxi. In Neza's memory, Han Fei had seen the other two of the 4 divine generals supported by the Wanderer City. But so far, only Xingyu and Duan Qingxi had contact with Han Fei. At this moment, Duan Qingxi summoned Neza's clone and the others and said, "In this 10,000 years competition, the Divine Capital Dynasty has extremely generous rewards. The top 10 will be rewarded with divine weapons, world origin, mystic yellow soil, and resources. Of course, the higher the ranking, the more generous the rewards will be. Even the top 10 to the top 100 will be rewarded with ultra-quality sea quelling bizarre treasures, world origin, mystic yellow soil, and resources. But I don't expect you to get those rewards. If you can't beat them, don't fight. Even if you watch the whole competition, you will benefit a lot." Someone said, "Since you're here, why don't you try?" Duan Qingxi said, "This world is not fair. There are countless heavenly talents on the divine land of the East Ocean. Although you can rank at the top of the Wanderer City, it's hard to say. You can fight for the top 10 in the Wanderer City. But in the divine land of the East Ocean, it's hard to say. If you can't even save your life, why do you want to fight for it?" Then, Duan Qingxi glanced at Neza's clone, but then turned her head, thinking it was a pity. If Neza's real body was still in the Pioneer Sea realm, he might be able to fight for the top 10. On the other side, Zhang Daqian's clone turned into Yi Fenglu, and Li Shenhao was chatting with him. "Brother Feng, I heard a piece of news. It's said that before the 10,000 years competition begins, there will be a preliminary competition. It's a super large-scale group challenge. In the first round, people will be eliminated, and in the next round, half of them will be eliminated. There will be a total of 3 rounds. Han Fei's heart did a flip. This is interesting. God knows where this fatty got the news. He even knows about the preliminary competition? Han Fei asked, preliminary competition? What kind of preliminary competition? Li Shenhao said in a low voice, Brother Fenglu, I certainly don't know that. However, I know that in one of the 3 preliminary competitions, people can fight each other to the death. Do you know what that means? It means that you may die. Brother Feng, I'm the closest to you in the first squad. Brother Feng, please take me with you. As he spoke, Li Shenhao stuffed the star shell into Han Fei's hand. God knew how many resources his father, Li Dazai, gave to Li Shenhao before he came here. Judging from this guy's personality, it was rather horrifying that he hadn't given away all the resources even after 50 years in the wilderness. Han Fei asked, What did Bai Ran say? Li Shenhao immediately said, Then I'll definitely come to you first, Brother Fenglu. Seeing Han Fei's eyes, Li Shenhao grinned and said, The captain said that there must be a team battle in such a situation. If the rules don't allow team battles, I can only count on myself. Han Fei looked at Li Shenhao casually. Do you think the rules allow team battles? Li Shenhao shrugged. I don't think so. According to common sense, there won't be a life-and-death battle in the first round. Too many people have been eliminated in the first round. If there's a team battle, a lot of people will be here to make up the numbers. In the second round, I think that a lot of people will be eliminated in the first round, so it's possible that there will be a team battle. But my guess is that there won't be a life-and-death battle in the second round, because it's an elite team. The strong will be protected by the team and won't be eliminated easily. So, it can only be the third round. Han Fei asked, So, will the third round be an individual competition or a team competition? Li Shenhao was stunned for a moment. I can't say exactly whether it's an individual competition or a team competition. There's no distinction in the qualifiers. It's exactly because I can't figure it out that I'm here for you, Brother Fenglu. If it's a team competition, you must help me, Brother Fenglu. I'm fat and I'm not good at fighting. But I, Li Shenhao, am a loyal friend. Han Fei chuckled in his heart. Why are you talking about such nonsense? Han Fei said, If your guess is correct, just follow me. Li Shenhao was stunned. He didn't expect Yi Fenglu, who was the second coldest in the team, to be so easygoing. In Li Shenhao's opinion, Hong Yu was the coldest, Han Fei was the second, and Bai Ran was the third, because Bai Ran was at least willing to talk, but Hong Yu and Han Fei weren't. As for Pan Ying, although it was said that he had suffered a lot in the past years, Li Shenhao didn't think that a descendant of a big family like Pan Ying was trustworthy and not as reliable as Hong Yu and Han Fei. After all, Hong Yu and Han Fei had bribed him with resources, and they accepted it. Their captain didn't have the habit of accepting bribes, so he didn't bribe him either. But in any case, Li Shenhao felt that he was much safer and comfortable. On this side, Han Fei was lying, when Feng Xingliu suddenly shouted, Han Fei, don't lie down. Come on, let me introduce some friends to you. Chapter 2348. Feng Xingliu was released by Feng Yu half a month ago. Of course, his wounds had been healed, or he would have wasted Han Fei's healing divine light. It was said that during that month, Feng Xingliu was tortured by Feng Yu for a month. It was said that Feng Xingliu received temporary special training to improve his combat ability. During this period, Han Fei visited him several times, but he was kicked out by Feng Xingliu in less than 100 minutes each time. When he was kicked out, Feng Xingliu kept saying that he was practicing his resistance. If he hadn't disdained to fight Feng Yu would have been beaten to the ground. Seeing Feng Xingliu, Han Fei was surprised. Hey, you were released? Feng Xingliu said angrily, What do you mean I was released? I asked her to beat me. It's body tempering. Believe it or not, if she had 2 hands, I would have come out half a month earlier. Hee, Han Fei thought to himself, You're shameless. If you had 2 hands, you would have been beaten to tears. Han Fei didn't bother to expose Feng Xingliu's mysterious vanity. He asked suspiciously, "Where did your friends come from? Haven't you been, well, body tempering these days?" Feng Xingliu looked at Han Fei deeply. "Have you forgotten that I used to be the most handsome boy on Fighting Dragon Street? I didn't have any friends. But half a month ago, a bunch of invitations came out of nowhere. Alas, I wandered around the Divine Capital Dynasty in the past half a month, met a lot of people, and earned a lot of resources." "Wait, you said you earned a lot of resources? How did you earn them?" Han Fei was immediately interested. Although he wasn't short of resources, he was curious when he heard that Feng Xingliu could earn resources on his own. With Feng Xingliu's stupidity, how could he possibly make any money without his guidance? Feng Xingliu chuckled. "I earned it from the casino. Some from the Fighting Dragon Street, and some from other casinos. Well, some from other people." Han Fei was confused. "From other people? Why didn't they give it to me?" Feng Xingliu immediately said, "Let's earn resources together. How could I forget you? Today, I invited them over for hot pot, so I invited you guys as well. I heard that they all want to give you resources." "Huh?" Han Fei was stunned. "Wait, someone is going to give me resources? Was he hit in the head by an iron-head fish?" Feng Xingliu asked, "What is an iron-head fish? Is it very powerful?" "It's a kind of iron-headed fish that can break a person's head with a single bump." Feng Xingliu couldn't help but be surprised. "So powerful? Next time, I'll ask my family to look for it and see for themselves. Let's go. After eating hot pot, let's go to the casino and have some fun." Han Fei was speechless. What had this idiot been doing recently? After a while, Han Fei came to Feng Xingliu's courtyard, but Feng Qingqing was not there, because Feng Qingqing was participating in the Pioneer Sea Realm competition. Feng Yi wasn't around either. She seemed to be quite close to that Princess Lanxin from the Godly Capital Dynasty. Apart from occasionally coming over to chat with him, she would run over to Princess Lanxin's side. So, maybe after Feng Yi finished training Feng Xingliu, she didn't pay attention to this guy anymore, so he became arrogant. Hardly had Han Fei arrived at the yard of the Phoenix Star School when he saw a bunch of foppish young men. Some were flirting with female cultivators, some were playing dice and drinking, and the most incredible thing was that a group of them was smoking with a big pipe. Han Fei was stunned. Was there even a pipe here? But after a closer look, he found that something was wrong. Although they were pipes, they contained a kind of liquid that could be burned. At this moment, it was burning with a pale golden halo, and when it was inhaled, it would spurt out a cloud of golden mist. It looked very coquettish. "Ah, this?" Han Fei was fascinated. "What's that?" Feng Xingliu smiled mysteriously and took out a big pipe for Han Fei. "This is very good. It's called Life of Luxury. It's said that it's made of the golden bark of a Pioneer Sea Realm cultivator. When you inhale it, you'll feel refreshed." "Oh, Xingliu is back. Fellow cultivator Han Fei is here. Come on. Han Fei." In the next moment, a group of beautiful female cultivators was released from the source stars. Someone pointed at Han Fei and said, "Go, serve fellow cultivator Han well, or you won't want to see the consequences." Someone shouted, "Come on, fellow cultivator Han Fei has come. Where are the resources we prepared? Take them out." Then someone took out an ultra-quality sea-quelling bizarre treasure, which Han Fei was dumbfounded. Someone fished out an ultra-quality sea-quelling bizarre treasure rod, but why was the end of the rod in the shape of a little hand? Han Fei asked, "Wait, what's this?" The girl ran over and scratched Han Fei with her little hand. "Brother Fei, it's ticklish. It's so comfortable. You can strengthen your body by scratching it often." "Pooh! Damn it." It was the first time that Han Fei knew that someone in the Pioneer Sea Realm could strengthen his body by tickling him. On the other side, someone brought over a folding fan and opened it in front of Han Fei, on which the words, "First on the Heavenly Roll," were engraved. More importantly, this fan was an ultra-quality sea-quelling bizarre treasure. Han Fei was even more dazzled by the words, "First on the Heavenly Roll." Another folding fan unfolded next to him. Han Fei turned his head and looked at it, only to see the words, #1 Warrior of the Fighting Dragon Street, engraved on it. Feng Xingliu proudly showed off in front of Han Fei and took a puff of the golden smoke. He opened his mouth and spewed out a cloud of dazzling golden mist, but mainly on Han Fei's face. At that moment, Han Fei's eyelids twitched violently, and he saw him snatch away Feng Xingliu's fan, the Dolong Street's #1 Warrior fan, and swing it down. Bam. I'll make you the #1 Warrior of the Fighting Dragon Street. Bam. I'll make you blow smoke in my face. Bam. I'll make you have 2 fucking beauties. Bam. I'll make you eat hot pot. Han Fei activated the Tao of Time, and Feng Xingliu had no time to react. Han Fei, don't go too far. If you slap me again, I'll lose my temper. Bam. I'll make you lose your temper. Han Fei released his killing intent, and the rich kids who were laughing and showing off their treasures a moment ago were stunned the next moment. What's going on? Didn't Feng Xingliu say that Han Fei was easy to get along with? Is he easy to get along with? Didn't he lose his temper just like that? Someone's heart skipped a beat, and he immediately shouted, "A bunch of idiots, look at what you're holding. Here's my..." With that said, the man took out a small world and said, "Brother Fei, this is only 200,000 square kilometers of resources. Please accept it." Han Fei was about to slap him in the face, but he held back when he heard that it was 200,000 square kilometers of resources. However, Han Fei wasn't as impatient as Feng Xingliu. He didn't even look at the 300,000 square kilometers of resources but looked at the messy people in Feng Xingliu's yard with a cold face. First, all the Pioneer Sea Realm cultivators disappear. The rich kids were stunned. Pioneer Sea Realm? Only the female cultivators were in the Pioneer Sea Realm. Immediately, they realized that Brother Fei didn't like women. Someone shouted, "Hurry up! Come to my natal stars. I'll break your legs if you're too slow." Wait. The young man who wanted to take them into the Origin Sea was stunned, wondering if Han Fei was going back on his words. Han Fei said, "Don't take back the natal stars. Let them be free. Go, go, go." Han Fei glanced at them just now. Although the female cultivators were all different, their eyes were lifeless. Besides, as cultivators, who wanted to live like this? Free? The female cultivators were all shocked. They all raised their heads and looked at Han Fei with indescribable light in their eyes. The rich kid who was stared at by Han Fei felt sorry and hurried to say, "Brother Fei, I'll listen to you. You're so lucky today. Why don't you thank Brother Fei?" "Thank you, Brother Fei." Han Fei waved his hand. "Don't call me a gangster." The rich kid took out a dozen bloodstones and threw them to the female cultivators. Then he urged, "Let's go. Can't you see we're busy here?" At this moment, he had no time to care about the female cultivators. He could find women anytime, but he couldn't afford to offend them now. After the female cultivators left, Han Fei asked casually, "What's your name?" The rich kid who let go of the female cultivators chuckled. "Brother Fei, my name is Chao Meng." "Chao Meng?" Han Fei thought to himself, it seems that there's a Chao family in the Divine Capital Dynasty too. Chao Zhen was a common surname. Duh. At this moment, the man squeezed out another word. Han Fei couldn't help but tilt his head. "Wait, do you have to pronounce your name separately?" Chao Mengda smiled awkwardly. "I was too nervous just now and forgot the last word." Han Fei didn't know what to say. "Chao Mengda? Why don't you call yourself Chao Mengda?" Han Fei looked around and found that there were 13 rich kids here in total. Including Feng Xingliu, there would be 14 of them. It was a good thing that Feng Xingliu wasn't born in the Divine Capital Dynasty. Otherwise, he would have been crippled. Han Fei said, "Just say it. If you have something to say, just say it. Don't smoke, scratch, or call yourself the best warrior of the Fighting Dragon Street." Chapter 2349. As the saying went, don't slap a smiling face. The attitude of these rich playboys was too good. Although the gifts were not very good, at least Han Fei was sure that these people were very rich. He casually took out an ultra-quality sea-quelling bizarre treasure and 200,000 square kilometers worth of resources. Clearly, he wanted something from him. Han Fei was intrigued. They were asking for his help with resources. Wasn't it better than hunting in the wilderness? Although he was very rich right now. Who would complain about having too many resources? Besides, he was establishing earth veins and giving birth to stellar cores. After forming the astral core, he still had to refine his body and find a way to refine enough golden jade essence. He even had to prepare a batch of resources to supply the 6th divine pill in the demon refining gourd. Both of those required resources. There were 14 guys here in total. He had to see what they wanted him and Feng Xingliu to do. If each of them could provide 200,000 kilometers worth of resources, he might be willing to help. However, he was at least at the peak of the star transformation realm, so he had to be cold. Han Fei said casually, "If there's nothing else, you can go now." Feng Xingliu felt a little embarrassed. He said, "Han Fei, Brother Chao and the others are here to make friends. Don't keep them at arm's length." Someone echoed, Yes, we all admire Brother Fei and are here to make friends with you." However, Han Fei sneered. "If you tell the truth, we can still talk. If you don't, there's no need to talk." "Make friends with you? With these?" Han Fei grabbed the long pipe that one of them gave him and waved it. "What? Do you want me to be like you?" Han Fei didn't give them any face. With his current strength, at least in the Divine Capital Dynasty, he didn't have to give face to many people. Many people exchanged glances and seemed to have decided something. Immediately, the guy who was going to give Han Fei money chuckled and said, "Brother Fei, we do have a small request, but rest assured. For Brother Fei and Brother Xingliu, it's very simple." Seeing that Han Fei still didn't respond, he quickly added, "We're willing to offer 200,000 kilometers of resources each. I'm going to give Brother Fei and Brother Stellar each 200,000 kilometers of resources." Han Fei's heart did a flip. If it was double, it would be a lot of money. When Feng Xingliu heard this, his expression immediately changed and he said, "You and I are brothers, how can I?" Bang! Han Fei slapped Feng Xingliu's head with his fan and spoke to him telepathically, "How can you be so shameless? Do you really think he's your brother? I just need your help with something. We're all rich people. Why do I need you to pretend to be rich?" Struck by Han Fei's fan, Feng Xingliu fell silent, thinking that he had been careless. Han Fei had always been a money grubber, so he was very good at making money. He should have followed Han Fei's example, but in the heat of the moment, he realized that he had fallen into their flattery these days. Feng Xingliu felt that he must have forgotten about it. He had completely forgotten about the way he acted just now. Hearing that they were going to pay, Han Fei couldn't help but grin. "Is that so? What's your name?" The man hurried to say, "Luo Defei, from the Luo family of the Divine Capital Dynasty. Brother Fei, please listen to us. It's really not a big deal." Han Fei grinned. He remembered that Qin Yi once told him that there were many big clans and forces in the Divine Capital Dynasty. Among them, there seemed to be the Luo family, the Wu family, the Li family, the Zhao family. Han Fei said casually, "Let's talk about something first." Luo Defei's heart did a flip, and he hurried to say, "Brother Fei, here's the thing. We're actually all concubines of the main bloodline. We have no choice. If we weren't fops, how could we have survived until now? But this time, our families demanded that even we have to participate in the 10,000-year competition. So, we just want to ask you to help us. As long as you and Brother Stellar are willing to help us, we can negotiate." Han Fei's heart did a flip. "First question, how do you know that I can protect you? Is there a chance of death in this competition?" Immediately, Luo Defei and the others smiled bitterly. He said, "Brother Fei, you don't know anything. This 10,000-year competition doesn't start directly. You also know that there are too many people participating in the 10,000-year competition. How can it start without eliminating a large number of people? So, there are actually 4 rounds of qualifiers." 4 rounds? Han Fei frowned. He just heard from Li Shunhao that there were 3 rounds. How did it become 4? One of the playboys said, "The first round is a basic test. It's to get rid of the people in the wilderness who used unknown means or tricks to sneak in, or those who bought the qualification token. However, the elimination rate for this round shouldn't be too high. Although it is a basic test, it can also be regarded as a preliminary. The second round is a mass elimination. There is a preset basic goal. Those who complete the goal within the specified time can enter the next round of qualifiers. But we don't know what the third and fourth rounds are. It is said that they are different from the previous 10,000-year competitions, so we dare not make wild guesses. However, we know that there will definitely be a fight between the contestants during this competition. Because there have been previous competitions, the probability of death is generally about 20%. So Han Fei couldn't help but be surprised. With more than 800,000 people at the heaven opening state participating in the competition, even after 3 rounds of elimination, a large number of heaven opening state powerhouses would be eliminated. 20% of the heaven opening state powerhouses would be at least 30,000 or 40,000 heaven opening state powerhouses, right? Han Fei couldn't help but gasp. 30 to 40,000 heaven opening state experts had died just like that? With the cultivation system and difficulty of the sea realm, Han Fei believed that there would be such a high probability of death in the sea opening state. However, there were definitely no heaven opening state powerhouses. After all, heaven opening state powerhouses were not cabbages. Even in the scavenger city, how many heaven opening state powerhouses were there? From the city to the so-called boundless mining area, there might be only about 400 people in total. Assuming that each of the 3 major forces in the chaotic wasteland had so many heaven opening state powerhouses, there would be more than 1,000 heaven opening state powerhouses. Even in the entire East Sea Divine Continent, there might be countless heaven opening state powerhouses in many forces. However, it was too terrifying to lose 30,000 or 40,000 at once. Therefore, Han Fei's first reaction was that it was impossible. Then he thought about it again and continued to be sure. The heaven opening competition only happened once every 100,000 years. It was impossible for so many people to die. The reason why he came to this conclusion was naturally because of the ominous sign that the Temple of Time had shown him. Heaven opening state powerhouses were not cabbages. God knew how long it would take for a cultivator to grow to the heaven opening state. Others might not know this secret, but it was impossible for the Dongwu Great Emperor not to know. As an absolute powerhouse who could suppress the entire East Sea Divine Continent, Han Fei had reason to believe that the Dongwu Great Emperor must know something. However, Han Fei didn't say his thoughts out loud. He just said, "So, you came to me and Feng Xing Lu to protect you?" Luo Dafei immediately smiled flatteringly. Yes, that's it." Han Fei smiled and said, "Then let me ask you a question. Is there anyone in your respective clans who wants your life? I suggest you answer this question seriously. Although you are all foppish, you should know that once it involves your clan, the price is different. If you don't say it now, don't say that you took money but didn't help." All of a sudden, the foppish youths heard 2 things. One was that their own safety would not affect their clan, and the other was that Han Fei seemed to be willing to help them. Everyone was silent for a while, and then one of the foppish youths said, "Brother Fei, my name is Wu Bufan. To be honest, someone from the main bloodline does want to get rid of me. If they really come, I promise to double the resources I give Brother Fei. If Brother Fei can help me get rid of the person who wants to get rid of me, I can double the resources I give Brother Fei." Han Fei smiled contemptuously. "Don't try to double my price again and again. 200,000 kilometers 3 times wasn't much. If there really is a life and death battle, I can give you a certain amount of protection. It's purely to protect 200,000 kilometers of resources. If someone comes to kill you, 300,000 kilometers of resources will be needed. If you want to kill the person behind the scenes, 500,000 kilometers of resources will be needed. However, this does not include the fight between the core disciples of the big clans. If it's that kind of disciple from the main bloodline, you should know what kind of anger I will face from those big clans if I kill him, right? So, if it's that kind of 1 million kilometers of resources." Then Han Fei raised the pipe in his hand, put it to his mouth, and took a puff. Hoona! A mouthful of golden mist came out of his mouth and nose. At this moment, Han Fei was calm and casual. He set a price for the core disciple of the main bloodline of the big clans. It tastes good. Han Fei complimented. Except for Feng Xingliu, all the foppish youths here were shocked. After a while, Chao Mingde suddenly said, "Brother Fei, then? What if it's the heir of the main bloodline?" Everyone couldn't help but look at Chao Mingde, thinking, "You're really bold." Han Fei took another puff of the big pipe and pondered for a moment. If it's really the heir, do you think he won't have any protectors? That's a special case. The price depends on the person. Don't give me an opponent on the level of Yi Qianxing. I don't think you can afford it. Everyone. Chapter 2350. Lunatic. When Han Fei put a price tag on everything, these rich kids thought that Han Fei was crazy. Not only did this guy offend the heavenly clans, but he also agreed to spend money to help them eliminate disasters. It seemed that Han Fei didn't care how big the trouble he caused was. God knew if he was crazy or confident that he could compete with the forces of the divine capital dynasty. Unfortunately, Han Fei's price was not low. Although they were all children of big clans, it was ridiculous for them to offer 1,000,000 kilometers of resources at once. Therefore, it was easy for them to find Han Fei as their bodyguard. If Han Fei helped them, they might not be able to offer 500,000 kilometers of resources for the one-stop service. It could only be said that their economic level could at most afford Han Fei's ordinary one-stop service. Although they would like to offer 1,000,000 kilometers of resources and ask Han Fei to help them eliminate someone in their clan, they didn't have the financial power to do so. Han Fei turned his head to look at Luo Dafei, who was holding 200,000 kilometers of resources, and said casually, "Leave the resources. You can come to me and Feng Xingliu later. Now go back and think about it." Han Fei looked around indifferently, not giving these people a chance to refute. These good-for-nothings, at least for now, were only second-rate goods. In fact, they couldn't even be considered second-rate goods. The reason why they befriended Feng Xingliu was that he and Han Fei were good at fighting. Since the two of them had fought their way through the Fighting Dragon Street, they had already made enemies with many rich kids. As the saying went, "The enemy of my enemy is my friend." So they all wanted to try their luck with Han Fei, but they didn't expect that Han Fei's appetite was so big that they couldn't afford it. Of course, in any case, these rich kids each left at least 200,000 kilometers of resources. Luo Dafei said, "Well, Brother Fei, you guys take a rest. I'll go first." Chao Mingde nodded. "Then we won't disturb Brother Fei and Brother Xingliu." After everyone left, Feng Xingliu couldn't help but say, "Actually, I don't think they are very bad." Han Fei sneered. "I'm not saying that they are bad, but that they are hopeless. I gave them a chance just now. If anyone has the guts, they can cooperate with me and directly kill some of the core members of the main bloodline. Whether it's resources or not, we can talk about it. The most important thing is that he will have more power in the future. Why would I make things difficult for them for such a small amount of resources?" Feng Xingliu, "What do you mean? I don't understand." "What I mean is, I don't see that they are qualified to achieve great things, nor do they have the ambition. They are just pure playboys." Even though that was what he said, he wasn't too sure. After all, the cultivation of these profligate young masters wasn't low, and they were very sly. Playboys and whatnot, they were all drama queens, but he didn't care about it now. 5 days later, there was only 1 day left until the start of the 10,000-year competition. At this time, the schedule of the 10,000-year grand competition was finally announced. The Venerable Realm, Sea Expansion Realm, and Heaven Creation Realm competitions were held on 3 adjacent islands. It was said that the first round was a basic test, because there were too many people. Therefore, even the first round of the basic test would last as long as 3 days. Besides, after the announcement was issued, one thing was made clear, that was, the first few rounds of the qualifiers of the 10,000-year competition were all qualification eliminations, and there was no need to watch the battles. Therefore, the qualifiers were not allowed to watch the battles. Because of this announcement, There was a rumor that at least 90% of the participants would be eliminated in the first 4 rounds of the basic test. Such a high elimination rate made many people nervous, because the first 2 rounds were purely a test of strength. Once eliminated, it was enough to prove the talent of most people. No matter how these people broke through all the obstacles to get the qualification token and appeared here, the basic test could best reflect the gap between them. On the second day, in the expectation of the crowd, Han Fei and Feng Xinglu went to the number 101 island together for the test. Han Fei didn't go with Feng Yu. Although everyone didn't know their identities, the Phoenix clan couldn't all have a close relationship with Han Fei. Otherwise, it would only cause people to misunderstand that Han Fei seemed to have a deep relationship with the Phoenix clan. Also, the reason why Han Fei didn't want to be too close to Feng Yu was that he was worried that the people of the Temple of Time would find out something. Swish, swish, swished. When Han Fei and the others rushed to the number 101 island, they found that it was already overcrowded. In the case of a super large group test, even the heaven opening state cultivators had to follow the rules and queue up obediently. However, the order of the queue was particular. Everyone lined up according to the number of the qualification token. Han Fei's qualification token showed number 306, which was the 306th tester in front of him. With this number, he didn't have to wait a long time for his turn to take the test like most people. When Han Fei stood at number 306, he naturally noticed Feng Yu and the others. In addition to Feng Yu, there were some people he knew here, such as Wu Shuang and Wang Beichen. There were also some people who weren't in the front, such as the 6th Lord of the Scavenger City, Qi Tonghai. As for the others, Han Fei didn't know them, but obviously, some of them were malicious to him. Han Fei looked over calmly and smiled. He didn't walk around much in the Divine Capital Dynasty. After all, he had only been here for 2 months. His only high-profile act was the provocative act of breaking through the Fighting Dragon Street. Therefore, these people who hated him were either from the Tian clan or some rich playboys on the Fighting Dragon Street who had their heads hit by iron-headed fish. But no matter which one it was, Han Fei didn't care. From the first time he heard the news of the 10,000-year competition in the Scavenger City, Han Fei knew that this was not just an opportunity to compete. Compared to the divine land of the East Ocean, the Scavenger City was too small. And the 100,000-year competition gathered the heroes of the world. Only in this place could one get a real test of their strength. At this moment, the number 101 island spanned more than 330,000 kilometers. It was not a residential island. This seemed to be a trial island specially used for training talents. This island was a bit like Han Xian's 9-palace heaven, with many trial grounds. Of course, most of these trial grounds were not prepared for the heaven-opening state. At present, there were more than 700,000 heaven-opening state powerhouses waiting in line here. There was only about half an hour left before the first round of the qualifiers began. In any large-scale competition, screening people was a troublesome thing. There wasn't much fun to be had during the screening process. In front of Han Fei and the others, there was a huge octagonal tower. Its height was more than 1,000,000 feet, and its width was more than 12,000 feet. The tower was completely black, with no doors or windows, only the shape of the tower. Above the first floor, the tower was shrouded by a boundary, and after 10 floors, Han Fei couldn't see it. There were 8 doors to enter the tower, which should be able to screen 8 people at a time. The further they went, the fewer people came. One after another, the number of people reached more than 750,000, but less than 800,000. It seemed that the number of heaven-opening state participants in this 100,000-year competition was a little less than he thought. After all, from the numbers he heard when he first came, Han Fei felt that the number of people was probably going to be in the millions. At that time, he was surprised that there were 1,000,000 heaven-opening state cultivators. What a huge force! But now it seemed that the number was almost 800,000. Now it seemed that the Dongwu Emperor might have only issued 800,000 heaven-opening state qualification tokens. Half an hour was about to pass. A staff member reminded, "Attention, contestants, the test will start in 10 seconds. Because this is a huge task, I hope you can arrange it in order." At this moment, In Han Fei's perception, a man wearing a starfish mask suddenly appeared. The contestants in the front were all extremely powerful. Han Fei noticed that someone was coming, and so did the others. However, this man wearing a starfish mask went straight to where Feng Yu was. Many people were shocked, thinking that this person must be extraordinary. How did he make it to the top 100? This guy walked slowly and casually. Less than 5 seconds after the start of the qualifier, he finally walked in front of Feng Yu. While everyone was guessing, this person took off the starfish mask on his face, revealing a mysterious man who seemed to be a little arrogant but seemed to have a faint smile on his face. Suddenly, someone exclaimed, "Fuck! The divine list, Zhao Qinglong." What? The Zhao Qingse who is ranked 10th on the divine list? Huh! How could it be? Why does the divine list want to participate in this 10,000-year competition? Isn't it easy for people of their level to come here? No, even if it's just the last place on the divine list, there's no need to compete with us, right? Someone's eyes darkened. Zhao Qinglong just entered the divine list more than 300 years ago. I'm afraid he only needs some resources to reach the Tao-proving realm. I'm afraid this guy is just here for the rewards of the 100,000-year competition, right? One is ranked 10th on the divine list, and the other is ranked 1st on the heavenly list. How can we pass this 10,000-year competition? Zhao Qinglong came to Feng Yu, took off the starfish mask, and thought for a moment. I didn't want to participate, but unfortunately, I don't have enough resources. I have no choice but to come and get some resources. Feng Yu said lightly, "Do it yourself. Hey, don't blame me for not reminding you. Be careful." Chapter 2351. The corners of Zhao Qinglong's mouth rose slightly, and he smiled. When the time for the first round of the preliminaries was right, he took the lead and walked towards the Black Tower. Han Fei looked at it from a distance, wondering how to pass the test. However, to Han Fei's surprise, Zhao Qinglong only went in for less than 2 seconds before he walked out again. And on the huge and tall tower gate, green light appeared. At this time, the trial referee said, "In the first round of the preliminaries, green light represents successful advancement and red light represents elimination. Now, the contestants, please enter the tower in turn." For a moment, many people were surprised and then relieved. It was just the first round of the preliminaries. So many people were waiting to take the test, so the speed of the test must be very fast. Following that, Feng Yi walked in, and as expected, in less than 2 breaths of time, Feng Yi had already come out. Then 1, 2, 3. When it was Han Fei's turn, almost half an hour had passed. Before Han Fei, of course, no one would fail the challenge because in the ranking range where Han Fei was, most of the contestants were famous and strong. Their basic combat power was mostly at the late stage of the star condensation stage. In this case, how could anyone fail the challenge in the first round? When it was Han Fei's turn, he didn't waste any time and stepped into the tower gate. As soon as he entered here, Han Fei found that the space here was abnormal. There was the great way of time here, which extended the time in this place to a certain extent. Because there was no comparison, Han Fei didn't know how many times the time was. In addition to the great way of time, the gravity here was 10,000 times that of the outside world. He couldn't borrow the power of the heavenly way here. This place seemed to suppress the power of the soul, and there was no power in the void to borrow. He couldn't connect to the natal stars here, but it seemed that he could summon spiritual beasts. This was a sea area. Han Fei was standing on the sea and facing the monstrous waves of tens of thousands of meters high. The huge waves were about to crash down. And as the waves got closer and closer, the pressure his soul felt became greater and greater. It seemed that this tide contained some kind of pressure of the great way. But Han Fei had seen all kinds of storms and waves. He immediately saw a pearl of light in the middle of the huge wave. When he saw that thing, Han Fei knew the elimination method of the first round of the preliminaries. This space was suppressed by the Great Tao. Under this gravity that was tens of thousands of times stronger, the participants had to rely on their own strength to break through the waves and grab the pearl of light at the fastest speed. Don't think that it's just a simple test. He's the first to test your speed. Because of the gravity here and the lack of strength in all aspects, your normal explosive speed is definitely not that fast. Apart from speed, the preliminaries also tested one's observation, strength, soul, resistance, physical strength, and many other aspects. Therefore, although he was simple and crude, he was also the most direct. It was a test of one's basic strength. If one couldn't even reach the basic strength, then there was no need to participate in the 10,000-year grand competition. However, Han Fei's physique, soul, and speed were all beyond what a normal person should have, so even if he didn't do anything, he came to the front of the tide in an instant. Bang! Punching through the tsunami, Han Fei grabbed the bead backhandedly. The bead of light appeared in Han Fei's hand, then turned into a ray of light and melted into the qualification token. A faint pattern appeared on the qualification token, indicating that he had passed the first round of the preliminaries. When this bead of light was grabbed, everything here returned to normal, and Han Fei was directly teleported to their door, stepping out of the Black Tower with one step. At this time, a green light appeared above his head, and Feng Xingliu's voice also came to Han Fei's ears. It's been less than 2 seconds. Are you going to wait for me? Looking at Feng Xingliu's ranking, Han Fei smiled faintly. I'll wait for you back. Feng Xingliu, the first round of the preliminaries was too boring. The purpose was too simple. In the past 3 days, Han Fei lay in his yard and cultivated in seclusion. In fact, he was just lying there and waiting for his natal stars to stop shaking. However, Han Fei underestimated the impact of his energy last time. Even now, the earthquake was still shaking. Obviously, he didn't create the earth veins at that time. His action of returning to the origin caused a lot of energy to be released. 40 years had passed on his natal star. Although the magnitude of the earthquakes was smaller, Han Fei estimated that it would take another few decades. Therefore, it was impossible for him to build the mother lode in a hurry. But fortunately, the 100,000-year competition would last for a long time. It took 3 days for such a simple first round of preliminaries. Then the difficulty of the second round would definitely be increased a lot, or it wouldn't be able to screen people at all. Therefore, Han Fei was sure that the increase in difficulty of the second round would inevitably lead to the extension of the competition time. Of course, if hundreds of thousands of people participated together, it would be a different story. 3 days later, the final screening result of the first round of preliminaries came out. The elimination rate was only 8%, less than 10%. This also meant that those who could go through so many dangers and reach the divine capital dynasty were more or less capable. This was because, among the 8% that were eliminated, only God knew how many of them were the ones who bought the qualification badges later. These people who bought the qualification badges were actually just buying a ticket. They didn't care whether they participated or not, they mainly wanted to see. Therefore, it didn't matter if they were eliminated in the first round. Besides, Han Fei estimated that he might not be able to eliminate all these people in the first round. After all, those who were born in the divine capital dynasty were not weak chickens with no abilities. In contrast, the elimination rate of the Pioneer Sea realm and the Venerable realm was much higher. About 14% of the Pioneer Sea realm were eliminated, less than 15%. And the Venerable realm directly eliminated 18%, but there were too many Venerables in this world. It was said that this 18% was as many as millions of people. On the 4th day, all the contestants continued to gather on island number 101. It was still the Black Tower, but this time, it was different from the last time. The referee of the major competition said, the second round of preliminaries, Tower Challenge, only the top 50% of the contestants with comprehensive strength will be selected. The second round of preliminaries will start in half an hour. This round of preliminaries will last for 3 months. But the elimination rate has reached 50%? 3 months is so long. 2 to 1. The real major competition of 10,000 years has begun. Many people were shocked. What did the elimination rate of 50% mean? As long as they successfully advanced, it meant that they had eliminated the middle upper level contestants in this round. and the middle upper level contestants in the major competition of 10,000 years were equivalent to the upper level in the wilderness, whether it was to fight for a ranking or to prove their strength. In this round, most people would go all out. Han Fei frowned slightly. It took 3 months, which was not short, and the referee didn't mention hunting, so it could be seen that this round didn't involve conflicts between the contestants. And this was probably a large-scale comprehensive test with everyone taking the test together. Half an hour later, the Black Tower and the octagonal gate opened at the same time, and a huge teleportation array burst out from the tower gate. The referee shouted, "All contestants, quickly enter the tower." The second round of preliminaries officially begins. Because Han Fei's ranking was very high, he didn't need to wait. He was the first to be teleported in. After coming in, he found that he was also in a wave. As far as he could see, it was a crab, crawling on the surface of the sea. As he scanned with his perception, there was only this crab within a range of about 80,000 kilometers. Hunting crabs? In Han Fei's and even many people's minds, the preliminaries were meaningless. The 4 rounds of preliminaries were just to continuously filter out the true participants who were qualified to participate in the competition. When this hill-like crab appeared, Han Fei knew that this was a simulated battlefield. He even suspected that this was an illusion, but so far he hadn't found any trace of an illusion. Han Fei just sensed the crab's power. After all, it had just entered the heaven-opening state. At this moment, the crab's claws rushed towards Han Fei like a phantom. Wherever it passed, a faint black mark appeared on the sea. When it was still more than 3,000 kilometers away from Han Fei, the 2 giant pincers were raised, but the crabs smashed them down like hammers. Thuds. Han Fei just raised his hand casually, and the seawater under his feet sank dozens of kilometers. But Han Fei didn't move at all. Instead, cracks appeared on the 2 pincers. Bam! Han Fei gave a backhand punch. It was just an ordinary punch, and the 2 giant pincers were smashed into pieces. This crab was punched through by Han Fei, but Han Fei didn't feel happy at all. 3 months? Such a long screening couldn't be so simple. After punching through the crab, a teleportation array appeared where the crab disappeared. When Han Fei stepped into the teleportation array and was sent to a sea, he saw a jellyfish. The jellyfish on the second floor was obviously stronger than the crab on the first floor. Its strength was about 10% stronger, and its attack method was to release poisonous mist and its weird tentacles, like vines all over the sea, like the means of a manipulator. Similarly, Han Fei smashed the jellyfish with a single blow with the million knife art. On the third floor, Han Fei encountered a sea urchin, which was about 1 level stronger than the one on the second floor. At this time, Han Fei felt something was wrong. Didn't the creatures on each floor grow a bit stronger? According to such a growth rate, Han Fei estimated that he wouldn't be able to defeat them if he went up a few dozen floors. Chapter 2352. In less than 10 minutes, Han Fei broke through the 10th floor in one fell swoop. The opponent on the 10th floor was a black whale, which was very powerful before it turned into a star. Han Fei thought that when he reached the next floor, he would face a star-level opponent. However, when he stepped into the 11th floor, he found that he was surrounded by more than a dozen sea creatures all at once. And these sea creatures still hadn't turned into stars, so it wasn't difficult for Han Fei to deal with them. But soon, Han Fei discovered a problem. There were more than just a few creatures on this floor. Every time he killed a living being, the living being that was killed would transform into 2 identical living beings, and they were of equal strength. Han Fei couldn't help but feel a little puzzled. How could he fight them? Originally, there were only 10 of them, but now there were 20 of them. Wasn't this just asking for trouble? According to the human wave tactic, Han Fei estimated that he could fight no more than 300 heaven-opening state powerhouses of this level at the same time. It wasn't that Han Fei wasn't confident, but that they were all at the heaven-opening state, and their range was limited. It was already good enough that he could resist so many of them. After all, a group of mindless tormented souls could exhaust Qiu Shouzong and Taiping to death, so there was no reason for him to be an exception. No. If this is the battle mode, then this floor alone may eliminate half of the people, and it will be very fast. It won't even take 3 months, not even 6 hours. Therefore, Han Fei immediately noticed that something was wrong. Since such a screening method was set up, it couldn't be too difficult. There was no need to compete in this competition. He could just finish it in one go. Therefore, Han Fei looked at the serpent that had been pierced by him and attacked again. Fist marks exploded, and 2 punches came one after another. Bam, bam, bam. One of the serpents was shattered and turned into nothingness, but it didn't continue to split and simply disappeared. Phew, I can only split it once. In this way, the difficulty of this level had been reduced by many levels. Golden fist marks appeared one after another, and in less than 10 minutes, Han Fei had broken through this floor. Starting from the 12th floor, Han Fei met creatures that had turned into stars. Although most people said that there was not much of a difference between a star transformation cultivator and a star transformation cultivator before and after transforming into a star transformation cultivator, one would realize that the difference was not small. At least this time, Han Fei had encountered a humanoid that was about 30% stronger than the last creature on the undevolved planet. At this moment, Han Fei felt that this was the second round of the qualifiers. The first 10 or so floors should be the same as the first round of preliminaries. It was just a basic screening. Only the 11th floor was a little more difficult. When Han Fei pierced through this star transformation humanoid race powerhouse, he found that the strength of the humanoid race that appeared on the next floor was only a little bit stronger than before, not even 10% stronger. It could only be said that the only difference between them was that their Daos were different. And this time, Han Fei passed more than 300 floors in a row. Even so, the strength of the late-stage star condensation powerhouse on the 300th floor was only about 30% stronger than the first late-stage star condensation powerhouse. However, on these 300-plus floors, Han Fei found that the Daos of these testers were all different. In other words, he'd actually clashed with over 300 grand Daos in this short period of time. Besides, Han Fei felt that these Daos he encountered were gradually becoming stronger. Obviously, there were strong and weak Daos. The stronger the Daos, the higher the level they were on. At this time, Han Fei realized that according to this preliminary method, many people should have been eliminated because the difficulty level was slowly increasing. In fact, in the outside world, from the moment the first person appeared outside the tower, only about half an hour had passed. That was, after half an hour, about 7,000 or 8,000 people had been screened out. Judging from the time, these people were all defeated on the 11th floor. When they found that there were less than 8,000 people here, they couldn't help blushing. They didn't expect that they were the weakest in this large group. After a total of less than 10,000 people were eliminated on the first day, hundreds of people were eliminated every day. Until half a month later, about 30,000 people were eliminated. Different from the elimination level on the 11th floor, there was only one enemy on each floor. Even if they were evenly matched, they might be able to pass if they slowly grinded their way out. Besides, fighting with the powerhouses who walked different Daos was actually a trial for all the testers. This would help them grow. Even after defeating the powerhouse on that floor, the teleportation array would still exist. As long as they didn't take the initiative to go to the next floor, they wouldn't be teleported to the next floor. As a result, the elimination rate was actually not high in this period of time. However, they were not stupid. This was a large-scale elimination. If they didn't hurry up and fight up, they would still be eliminated after 3 months. Therefore, the invisible pressure forced them to fight up. And just when many people were working hard to fight up, Han Fei had reached all the way to the 999th floor. Even if he reached the 999th floor, the power of this late-stage star transformation stage powerhouse was only twice as strong as the first star transformation stage powerhouse. And so far, Han Fei hadn't encountered anyone who walked the same Daos as him. This made Han Fei feel a lot of doubts, because this was not like a simple preliminary competition. Although the purpose of this second round of the preliminary competition was also to screen out people, he couldn't have fought to the 1000th floor only to find an enemy who was twice as strong as him, right? In the face of absolute strength, no matter how their Daos changed, if their strength didn't change much, they would still be no match for him. Therefore, Han Fei estimated that in this second round of the preliminary competition, on the other hand, it might be a benefit for all the contestants, so that the contestants could hone themselves in various aspects. In fact, not only Han Fei had this feeling, but the people at the top of the ranking basically all had this feeling. On the 1000th floor, Han Fei's opponents finally ushered in a change. His opponents suddenly became 10 people. That trick again? Han Fei thought it would be the same as the 11th floor. After defeating one person, that person would become 2 opponents with the same strength. Before it was a one-on-one duel. Even if he fought to the 999th floor, it could only be said that the opponent's strength had been getting stronger. The space of 80,000 kilometers was not big, but it was not small either. If one side just defended and refused to fight head-on, as long as the strength gap was not big, it would not be easy to lose. However, if the opponents became 10 people, this place obviously became narrow. After more than 10 minutes, Han Fei stretched his muscles and bones quite easily, and a new teleportation array appeared around him. Han Fei thought that these opponents would be divided into 2, but in fact, they were 10 late-stage celestial transformation realm powerhouses. It was still a very simple level. On the 1001st floor, the number of opponents suddenly changed Han Fei's understanding. The number of late-stage celestial transformation realm powerhouses suddenly increased from 10 to 100. The numbers suddenly increased tenfold, which made Han Fei realize that this level was probably the final level. These were not 100 tormented spirits, but celestial transformation late-stage powerhouses. If one really thought about it, they were much more terrifying than the tormented spirits. Han Fei looked solemn. In terms of realm, he might not be as strong as these ghost spirits, because they had already formed star cores and were real late-stage celestial transformation realm powerhouses. But for him, the earth veins had not been formed yet. It would not be easy for him to fight against 100 such opponents. In this time, Han Fei really attacked with all his strength, but he didn't use the God-slaying gloves, the God-sense beads, or the power of the heavenly law. He couldn't borrow the power of the heavenly law here. Therefore, he just fought with pure basic strength. Bam, bam, bam. When Han Fei's fist mark flew across the sky and pierced through a person, his body was also hit horizontally. Hundreds of great techniques fell on him at once. If it weren't for his strong physique and deteriorated soul, he would have been killed in a single blow. Half an hour later, Han Fei pierced through 16 people, but he had been hammered thousands of times. The reason why he fought so slowly this time was that he couldn't find a chance to attack in a short time, because there were too many great techniques attacking him at the same time, and other great Daos affected him. 1 hour later, Han Fei's body was sore and he felt very tired. At this time, he had pierced through a total of 39 people. As the number of people decreased, he had more and more opportunities. Compared with the first hour, he pierced through 9 more people in the last hour. In this crazy and fierce fighting environment, Han Fei couldn't remember how many times he had been hit, but he was sure that the birth of the great Tao in his natal star had accelerated, and his flesh and blood were also frantically absorbing the power and resource supply of the Origin Sea. After such a crazy and fierce battle, Han Fei unexpectedly found that this kind of fighting method was actually beneficial to the birth of the Golden Jade Essence. Unfortunately, the birth speed was too slow. After fighting for an hour, only about 1% of the Golden Jade Essence was condensed, which was less than 1 drop. It was still too difficult to refine his body in this way. 1.5 hours later, there were only 33 people left here, and Han Fei felt that he was about to collapse. But fortunately, the pressure was getting smaller and smaller now. Besides, Han Fei mainly left some opponents who were more suitable for melee and exciting combat, such as the Great Tao of Strength, the Great Tao of Thunder, the Great Tao of Lightning, the Great Tao of Gravity, and the Great Tao of Boxing. Unlike when he fought in the Fighting Dragon Street, although he also fought 100 people, the other party didn't fight all at once. Besides, at that time, he could use the Great Tao at will and borrow power, but not here. Therefore, Han Fei was actually able to defeat 100 people, which was actually extremely terrifying. At this time, Han Fei no longer hesitated and finally launched the Heavenly Awakening Divine Technique. At that moment, Han Fei felt that every cell in his body was aching, and every inch of his skin was soothed. It was not that he couldn't defeat the remaining people, but that he wanted to use these people to refine his body. Although Senior God of War had said that he should refine his body after forming the Earth Vein and the Star Core. However, anyway, this round of preliminaries would last for 3 months, and he could use their power to guide the energy in his natal star and stabilize it faster. Chapter 2353. 2 months later, the second round of qualifiers. Nearly 720,000 people had already gathered outside the Black Tower. Most of these people had been eliminated from the 1,000th floor, but there were also some who had reached the 100th floor or even the 1,000th floor. Most of these people who had been eliminated were sitting cross-legged outside the Black Tower. The moment they came out, they did not even have time to return to their residences. Because there were too many things in their minds that needed to be channeled. There were too many things for them to absorb in this second round of qualifiers. Anyone who came out of the Black Tower later felt that as long as they absorbed this part of the experience, their strength would increase by at least 10%. Of course, there were also many people who came out early, or comprehended quickly enough, so they had already finished consolidating their strength and reviewing. However, most of these people did not look too good. That was because the numbers on their qualification badges made it clear to them that they had been eliminated. There were a total of 800,000 heaven-opening powerhouses, and in the end, they were ranked 500,000th. If this was not a death sentence, what else could it be? Someone sighed. It is said that someone fought to the 1,000th floor before being eliminated. Isn't this round of qualifiers too difficult? It's more than 10 times more difficult than the first round of qualifiers. Someone said, now there are already many powerhouses in the top 100,000 who have been eliminated. Many people are said to have reached the 1,001st floor. Do you know what kind of abnormal opponent that is? What is it? It is said that it is 100 star transformation late-stage powerhouses with different DAOs. 100? Are you kidding me? I can understand if it is 10, but how can they fight 100? And are they ordinary star transformation late-stage powerhouses? Above the 500th floor, those star transformation late-stage powerhouses are basically not bad opponents. Above the 900th floor, I reckon that they have already embarked on the star path and are truly powerful star transformation late-stage powerhouses. 100, I am sure that I will not last more than 10 breaths of time. Someone said, don't even think about 10 breaths of time. I can't even last 5 breaths of time. Someone sneered, don't argue. Just think about the hundreds of DAOs crushing your body. To put it bluntly, being able to last 3 breaths of time can only be considered luck. This has nothing to do with strength. But someone else added, currently, most of those who were originally in the top 100,000 have come out to review their results. They must have gained a lot. But I noticed something. That was, there were less than 10 people in the top 30,000 who had made it out. Do you know what this means? Only 10 people? Quite a few people were shocked. They weren't stupid. If they didn't come out, it meant that these people might have reached the 1,000th floor, or maybe they had already passed. At this moment, Han Fei, who was besieged by a group of people, smiled. 100 late-stage celestial transformation powerhouses were too many, but 33 people were just right for Han Fei. With so many people, firstly, they couldn't hurt him, and secondly, they wouldn't feel tired. With their power to refine his body and release the energy, Han Fei's natal star finally calmed down and stopped shaking. During this period of time, his golden jade essence had increased by 4 drops. It was definitely not a lot, but it would more or less increase his strength. The most important thing was that his natal star had calmed down, which made Han Fei take a long sigh of relief. It meant that he could start building earth veins now. Previously, he had impulsively returned to his origin, causing him to take so long to form the earth vein. If not for that, his earth vein would have already been formed. After the golden fist mark swept the 33 people. On the next floor, Han Fei encountered a late-stage celestial transformation powerhouse. Han Fei was not surprised. Just now, it could be said that 90% of the people would be eliminated there. And now, when a late-stage celestial transformation powerhouse appeared, it meant that the difficulty level had increased again. A late-stage celestial transformation powerhouse, even the weakest one, was not something an ordinary late-stage celestial transformation powerhouse could resist. A late-stage celestial transformation powerhouse could only be said to have completed the celestial transformation stage and embarked on the celestial path. But a late-stage celestial transformation powerhouse had even completed the celestial path. After taking this step, their natal stars would be indestructible. Their natal stars could connect to the power of many great stars. The external performance was that their physique and soul power had skyrocketed, their battle endurance had skyrocketed, and the aura of the great path born from their natal star had skyrocketed. In any aspect, a late-stage celestial transformation powerhouse would be fundamentally crushed. For example, suppose a heaven-opening powerhouse turned into a star and gave birth to a star nucleus. His basic strength was 10 points. Then a late-stage celestial transformation powerhouse who had completed the celestial path might have 20 points, or even more. But even a late-stage celestial transformation powerhouse with a combat power of 20 could not be compared to a few late-stage celestial transformation powerhouses with a basic strength of 10 points. Han Fei was powerful enough. When he rescued Feng Xingliu and Feng Qingqing in the Singing Sea, in fact, his strength could barely compete with He Sha. How much strength did Han Fei use? With the god's thought beads, the god-slaying gloves, the power of heaven, the great path, and the law of heaven and earth, he barely defeated He Sha. But in fact, at that time, he mainly scared He Sha away. And after tomorrow's camp, he killed a late-stage celestial transformation powerhouse. At that time, his basic combat power had been greatly strengthened. With the help of Void Theft, he could only kill the late-stage celestial transformation powerhouse with only 1/3 of his strength left. If that person was him in his perfect state at that time, Han Fei was sure that he couldn't kill him. Now, Han Fei's comprehensive strength in all aspects had once again made a qualitative leap, and he was sure that he could fight against a normal late-stage celestial transformation powerhouse. However, since he regarded this as a trial, Han Fei didn't plan to use Void Theft at the beginning. If he counted Void Theft, Han Fei felt that it was possible for him to fight all the way to the first place. But this was only the second round of the qualifiers. The ranking was actually not very important. Therefore, fighting against this late-stage celestial transformation powerhouse who focused on speed, Han Fei was beaten for a whole day before he found an opportunity to defeat him. However, Han Fei felt a sense of accomplishment after defeating a late-stage celestial transformation powerhouse, because he only used the power of the god's thought beads. He didn't know if it was because the strength of the first late-stage celestial transformation powerhouse he encountered was relatively weak. When Han Fei encountered the second late-stage celestial transformation powerhouse, the god's thought beads were completely useless. He was beaten all the way, and after being beaten for 6 hours, Han Fei felt that he was about to be defeated by the opponent, so he stole the opponent's combat awareness to buy himself some buffer time. It wasn't until the third day that Han Fei was sure that with his pure strength and the god's thought beads, he couldn't defeat this late-stage celestial transformation powerhouse at all, so Han Fei used the god-slaying gloves. Finally, he defeated this late-stage celestial transformation powerhouse with difficulty. Han Fei estimated that with his strength, it should be no problem for him to reach the third round. Han Fei naturally walked to the next floor. He didn't stop but reviewed the battle. Because this was originally a basic strength training, there was no need to review it. After reaching the next floor, when Han Fei fought hard, he found that the strength of this person was so strong that he was completely no match for him with the god-slaying gloves. Han Fei, who didn't intend to compete for the ranking, naturally gave up the battle. For him, as long as he could enter the third round, it would be enough. Anyway, there was no reward for this qualifier. Besides, although he could use the power of Tao, the power of time, the laws of heaven and earth, void theft, and many other great skills, there was no need to use them here. Instead, he felt that he had to find time to get out as soon as possible, because he still had to build the earth vein. In the outside world, there were still nearly 80,000 people who hadn't come out yet. And Feng Yu, Feng Xingliu, Zhao Qinglong, Wang Beichen, Wu Shuang, and the others hadn't come out yet. But Han Fei's figure suddenly appeared. Why is he here? This is a big shot, a terrifying powerhouse who killed Yi Qianxing. Why did he come out so early? Could it be that he cleared the stage? After all, this guy killed a peak celestial transformation powerhouse. He shouldn't be able to pass the level, right? Zhao Qinglong on the divine roll and Feng Yu, the first on the heavenly roll, didn't pass the level. Even if he killed Yi Qianxing, it doesn't make sense for him to pass the level so early. Immediately, many people looked at Han Fei in surprise. Han Fei, on the other hand, immediately went to where the referee was. Hello. Can I go back now? The judge seemed slightly surprised too. He looked at Han Fei's wrist. Han Fei looked down and found that the number 306 on his wrist had changed, replaced by 1986. This meant that 1986 people had gone further than him. However, no matter what, the second round was already in the bag. The judge nodded slightly. Yes, after this round of qualifiers, there will be a 3-day buffer time for the third round of qualifiers. We will notify you then. Also, you don't have to change your room. It will be arranged according to the initial position. Han Fei nodded. Okay, thank you. Chapter 2354. There were still 24 days before the end of the second round of qualifiers. If he started to shape the earth veins immediately, he would have about 17 years. His natal star. Han Fei lay on the surface of his own star. Although it was a bit messy, it was only caused by the internal energy riot. Once the star was completely shaped, it could become a fairyland at any time. Han Fei didn't rush to shape the earth veins. He first went to communicate with the god of war for a while, and after half a day of discussion, he returned to his natal star. At this moment, an ordinary sphere appeared in front of Han Fei. Outside the sphere, there was a layer of ordinary clear water, which formed the shape of a human. Han Fei used different materials to shape the bones of this human model that he created at random and used the sphere as the heart. Han Fei looked at the sphere and regarded it as the star core, which was equivalent to the human heart. The god of war said that I can shape the veins by observing my body. Different races have different body structures, so they have different ways to shape the veins. Han Fei thought to himself, this is completely copying the meridian flow of my body. But there is a problem, that is, although it is a set of meridians, it is divided into the primordial veins and the eternal darkness veins. These two spiritual veins are the same set of meridians. If I shape the earth veins for my natal star in this way, there shouldn't be any conflict, right? After all, there is no such thing as a spiritual vein in a natal star. It is not difficult to understand how to shape the earth veins. Han Fei's first step must be to shape the main veins, extraordinary meridians, and then the branch veins. The so-called branch veins are the veins derived from all the paths of the main veins and extraordinary meridians. These thin veins only need to be able to carry the operation of the earth veins. Their main purpose is to channel the energy in the star core and breed the aura of the Great Way. It only took Han Fei one day to make a plan and start to copy it. With a thought from Han Fei, a big crack appeared on the Life Star City. Han Fei waved his hand casually, and the surrounding land rose up into the shape of a group of mountains. Below the big crack was a stream of water, which was connected to the mountains by a great waterfall. In this way, the mountains and rivers appeared above, and the earth veins were hidden below. The layout of every earth vein was a test. Some were made into mountains and hidden among the mountains. Some were set up by Han Fei at the places where water sources converged and spread out, creating rivers on the surface and hiding underground veins. Some were hidden by Han Fei in the deep sea and blocked by the turbid fog deposited in the deep sea. The big veins were easy to set up, but the small veins were troublesome. It took Han Fei 8 months to visit every corner of his natal star and finally set up the main veins, special veins, and some more important veins. However, that was not all. If he wanted to form a complete Earth vein, he would have to use the smaller veins to slowly link the larger veins together. A large vein was bound to be surrounded by tens of thousands of smaller veins that needed to be sorted out slowly. Han Fei made some places burst out with strong vitality, forming a large forest here. All the flowers and trees that Han Fei had seen before could grow here. Although this place would be destroyed again in the next restoration, the layout was already there. Once it was destroyed, it could be rebuilt. It was a piece of cake for Han Fei. Some places were transformed into vast plains by Han Fei. In some places, water flowed in all directions. On his natal star. After a full 7 years. Originally, this natal star could grow freely. As long as Han Fei wanted, this place could be turned into a fairyland. However, under Han Fei's many arrangements, this place only became a habitable star. In the past few years, Han Fei didn't consume many resources. He found that every time he opened up an Earth vein, the energy in the star core would rush in. And once the energy in the star core entered the Earth vein, it would slowly accumulate into Earth vein spring water. When Han Fei finished shaping all the energy on his natal star, less than 30% of the energy in each inching star core had been consumed by Han Fei. The reason why he consumed so little was that the energy hadn't been completely transformed into Earth vein spring water, so the Earth vein hadn't been completely activated. When the Earth vein settled and was completely transformed, the energy in the star core would be consumed a few more times. However, Han Fei didn't intend to wait for the energy to slowly settle and transform. Now, on Han Fei's natal star, including the minor veins around some large veins, there were as many as millions of them. And the minor veins under the minor veins, which didn't matter even if they were destroyed, were as many as 100 million. Otherwise, it wouldn't have taken Han Fei 7 years to plan this thing. After doing all this, Han Fei prepared a volcanic crater at every place where the Earth veins converged. When the energy gathered abnormally, it could be vented through the volcanic craters, so that it wouldn't shake for nearly 100 years like before. And Han Fei had built as many as 6,516 volcanoes, which wasn't a large number, or even a little small. This was because he hadn't felt the energy outburst yet, so he didn't know where the abnormal energy gathered. Therefore, he planned to return to the origin once again. After this time, he would be able to continue laying out plans for the place where the energy was abnormally converging and create more volcanoes. This way, the work of forging the meridians would basically be completed. When Han Fei sat cross-legged and began to carry out power restoration, all his resources floated outside the sea of stars. The step of building veins didn't require many resources. The small amount of resources was to make up for the lack of resources in some special places. At that moment, Han Fei sensed that the infinite energy was about to explode inside his natal star. The countless Earth veins that he created were almost completely filled with energy in only half an hour. And some of the more than 6,500 volcanoes that Han Fei had set up had already begun to move. Of the 6,516 volcanoes, more than 2,500 erupted one after another. The state of power restoration ended half a month later, but at this moment, Han Fei's natal star was densely covered with volcanic ash. After 3 years, the volcanic ash hadn't completely settled. And in the past 3 years, Han Fei almost doubled the number of volcanic craters formed by his natal star. Although Han Fei didn't want to interfere with it, if a star was allowed to develop and evolve freely, who knew how long it would take? Therefore, in the 12th year of Han Fei's seclusion, he carried out the natal star restoration again. After this time, there was only about 20% of the energy left in each inching star core. Unfortunately, the time was too short. Even if Han Fei hurried, he still had about 20% of the star core's energy left. And at this moment, Han Fei's natal star was full of energy, and the entire sky of the star core was covered with volcanic ash, gray and hazy. During this period, this star was completely uninhabitable. Basically, Anyone below the Pioneer Sea state would die and be directly torn into pieces by this crazy energy. Han Fei came out on the 15th year of seclusion. It seemed that the natal star needed to naturally settle for a while. In just a month, it was not bad to be able to build Earth veins. Han Fei looked at his information and found that the data after building the Earth veins were basically the same as before. He couldn't help but nod slightly. Although Yi Qianxing's star core was brought back by him, he might not have been able to fully absorb this part of power. Or maybe he hadn't finished the step of turning into a star yet. According to the god of war, when a star core was born, the energy would feed back and then a star core would be born. Therefore, no matter how violent the energy was now, it might not be enough when the star core was born. At that time, if it wasn't enough, he would either have to find a new energy source, or he would have to use all of his resources. In the yard, Han Fei suddenly appeared. A smile slowly appeared on the corner of his mouth. According to this time, when the third round of the qualifiers was over, he could take the time to do the last recovery. At that time, Yi Qianxing's star core would be completely digested. At that time, he should be able to start the preliminary birth of a star core. Hey! Han Fei, are you in seclusion again? Huh! Han Fei had just come out and didn't notice when Feng Xingliu came. Han Fei asked, "When did you come? Isn't the second round of the qualifiers not over yet?" According to Han Fei's calculation, there should be 1 day before the end of the second round of the qualifiers, and 4 days before the third round of the qualifiers. Feng Xingliu immediately leaned over and looked at the qualification token on Han Fei's wrist, which had the number 3698. Han Fei didn't notice it. Last time, it was 1986, but now it had fallen to Feng Xingliu's level. But Han Fei turned his head and looked at Feng Xingliu's wrist, only to find that this guy was still blocking. Han Fei also saw that this guy had fallen to the 8,907th place. Han Fei couldn't help but grin. Well, it's just the second round of the qualifiers. Don't take it seriously. However, Feng Xingliu said, I passed the 1001st level, the level with 100 late-stage star transformation cultivators. Is that a level that a human can pass? After passing it, I'm only 8,907th place? Han Fei asked, didn't you already pass it on the Dolong Street? Feng Xingliu frowned. So I passed it again. Han Fei asked, you can't last long against a late-stage star transformation cultivator? Feng Xingliu curled his lips. I really can't last half an hour. Han Fei nodded slightly. Not bad. If you didn't last half an hour, you wouldn't have reached the 8,907th place. Hey, by the way, why are you here instead of reviewing the battle? Feng Xingliu said mysteriously, those fops sent me a message. The third round is a team competition, and they want to team up with us. Team competition? Han Fei realized that Li Shenhao's speculation was right. There was indeed a team competition. However, Han Fei asked in confusion, can we team up freely? Feng Xingliu said, we can't team up with them, but they said that they are all useless and that it's not a good idea to team up with us. Besides, as long as they pull some strings, they can be assigned to our team. I'm just thinking that since we've accepted their resources and given them a certain amount of protection, it wouldn't be good to reject them directly, right? Han Fei thought for a moment. But it doesn't matter who we team up with, but you have to tell them not to mess with the experts in the top 10,000, or I'll have to pay them more. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.